Why record podcasts on Zoom?
And you could use Riverside. Switch to River.
Yesterday, Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, was testifying before Congress, and here's what he had to say about what he had seen Hamas do.
A family of 4, a young boy and girl, 6 and 8 years old, and their parents around the breakfast table. The father, his eye gouged out in front of his kids. The mother's breast cut off.
Yeah, I have heard
the girl's foot
this is
amputated.
fucked up if
the
it's
boy's
true.
fingers cut off before they were executed. And then their executioners sat down
why
and
does
had a
her
meal.
face look so weird?
That's what this society is dealing with. And
I think
no
it's
nation
the
can tolerate that.
like the
And as we've said
video
repeatedly, as
footage,
President
but,
Biden has repeatedly
like,
made
look
clear,
at that. What the fuck?
Israel has not only the right but the obligation to defend itself and to try
Why
to
is
take every
her
possible
chin
step
wiggling so
to make
weird
sure
like
this doesn't
that?
happen again.
So, he's testifying about that, and he's completely correct. What did the media focus on? They didn't focus on what Blinken actually had to say. What they focused on is protesters disrupting Blinken. Now, again, these protesters are garbage human beings and morons. What they're doing is they sat in the back of the room holding up their hands, stained red with ink, to suggest that Tony Blinken has blood on his hands. Now, they wouldn't do this with regard to Hamas. And I just will point out here an odd and disturbing parallel. Here are all these people holding up their red hands to show that America has blood on its hands or whatever the hell that is. But here's a little bit of the video.
Collins, distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee, thank you for this opportunity
That is weird.
to testify before
I
you
mean,
today.
I do agree that America has blood on their hands, but
Densely populated areas. Stop supporting the genocide and ethnic cleansing of the people of Gaza. Cease fire now. Save the children of Gaza. Save
this is
the
kind of
children
cringe. What the
Not
fuck?
in the face of an intensifying strategic competition in the Indo-Pacific.
No more
and
money
around
for
the world.
Gaza.
Permanently
Money for
unemployable
Israel, I
idiots
do
at
agree
best,
with that.
evil,
But
genocidal,
the way that they're acting
anti-Semites
is
at worst.
cringe as fuck.
It's despicable people. Anyway, there is an odd echo, odd historical echo here. And the people holding up their red hands to the camera. Last time I saw hands that red, it's when there were, actual members of the Palestinian Authority holding up their red hands after having butchered an Israeli soldier who mistakenly drove into Ramallah. I mean, it's hard not to see that particular picture. That picture was pretty famous back in the day. By the way, this administration is now talking about giving the Palestinian Authority control over the Gaza Strip, which is the Palestinian Authority is literally paying the families of the terrorists who murdered people in the Gaza envelope. So that would just be kind of changing one horse for the same horse of a slightly different color. That's what the Biden administration is now talking about. Now, the question is, will the Biden administration go weak-kneed on all of this because of all of the press coverage and because
I don't
of the
wanna
supposed
pay your
internal
fucking
dissent,
ass,
despite the
bro.
fact that, again, the polling data in the United States suggests broad and
Is this
wide
motherfucker
support
gonna
for
ask for
Israel in
money?
this conflict.
Oh,
With
this
all
is
this turmoil in
great.
the world, with the economy on tenterhooks, with it seeming as though everything is chaotic, you might want to diversify into something that has never been worth zero. You might want to diversify into precious metals the same way that I do. We keep on spending and spending and spending and spending. And Joe Biden's going to keep spending and spending. The devaluation of the dollar is coming. Everyone knows this. We have $35 trillion in national debt. Protect your savings today by diversifying into gold with the help of Birch Gold Group. Here's the best part. When you open an IRA with Birch Gold, for every $10,000
Bro,
you
one of my
spend by December
problems with
22nd,
Ben
Birch
Shapiro's
Gold will send you
videos
a free
is
gold
like
bar. Just
half
text
of
Ben
the
to
video
989898
is an
to
ad.
claim eligibility before Black
annoying
Friday.
as fuck.
Birch Gold can even help you convert an existing IRA. Shop BEAM.com/Ben. On the international front, the battle in the media is a major part of what is going on because on the ground, Israel is winning. Last night, as mentioned, Israel struck a series of tunnel complexes under the Jabalia quote-unquote refugee camp. I'm saying quote
Yeah, that was definitely wrong. They should not be striking refugee camps.
unquote because it's actually just a city. People are calling areas in the Gaza Strip refugee camps as though these people are going to be imported into Haifa or something. There are giant buildings that have been there since 1948 and before. So many of the quote-unquote refugee camps that you're seeing are actually just cities. And calling them refugee camps is a way of weaponizing them against the future of the state of Israel. That's part of the goal. But Israel did strike a bunch of tunnel complexes. They've killed an enormous number of members of Hamas's leadership. They're penetrating deep into the Gaza Strip, particularly in the northern portion of the Gaza Strip. And so that's creating desperation on the part of Hamas, which you are seeing in them now attempting to say that they're going to release some passport holders. American passport holders were being held up by Hamas in the Gaza Strip. They're not being allowed to leave via the Rafah crossing. Apparently, Hamas is now thinking about maybe allowing that to happen because they're trying to create some sort of sentiment that they're not all that bad. I mean, they are releasing people with dual passports. You'll see Hamas in future weeks, I would assume, say the same about dual passport holders among the hostages that they are currently holding in an attempt to buy off America, for example. You may see them take some people with dual nationality, Israeli, American nationality, and release some of those people in an attempt to buy off the Americans.
Which,
of course, is a sickness of its own. Because now you have Nazi-type selection, in which if you have the right passport, you go to the right and live, and if you have the wrong passport, you go to the left and you die in the tunnels with these evil monsters.
Did these motherfuckers declare war on me?
So what Hamas is relying upon is that the international community...
Enemies. Okay. Well, fuck you then.
...will stop Israel from finishing them off. That's what they're relying upon right now. Because on the ground, Israel is in fact winning. Which is why you are seeing ancillary groups like the Houthis suddenly decide to get in.
All these.
All of these groups are being run by Hamas. Yesterday, the Yemen Houthi rebels entered the war with Israel after it launched drones and missiles at the south of the country earlier today. All that stuff was shot down. The Houthis are part of the Iranian axis of resistance. It must be noted at this point that the Iranian Houthis were a...
No, I do not think that them bombing what he called a city, even if it is a city and it's not a refugee camp, I still think that it's wrong. I mean, I also think that America during World War II bombing Nagasaki and Hiroshima is wrong too, so.
State Department labeled terrorist group under the Trump administration. One of the first moves of the Biden administration was to remove the Houthis from the terror list, despite their charming slogan, death to the Jews, death to America.
Fuckload of money, boys.
So now they've decided that they are going to enter the war. Now, do they have the projected power to seriously impact Israel? The answer is no. Israel is sending some naval assets into the region to shoot down anything that the Houthis decide to fire. But this is essentially Iran trying to threaten everyone from every border without losing important pieces
these fucking
of the pie.
non-aggression pacts.
So right now, Iran has proxies everywhere. The proxies act as their offensive military mechanism. Iran does not have the actual projective capacity from its own country to destroy Israel outright. So instead, it uses proxy groups like Hamas, like Hezbollah. Hezbollah has so far stayed out. The reason that Hezbollah has not gotten in full scale is because my theory of this entire conflict is that this was generated by Iran in order to stave off the Saudi peace process. I think everybody who understands geopolitics understands that this is what's happening right now. And the reason is because that process has been working amazingly well. The Abraham Accords are holding. Ali al-Noaimi, who's the head of Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee in the UAE Parliament, said, quote, "From the UAE perspective, the Abraham Accords are here to stay. We want everyone to acknowledge and accept that Israel is there to exist." That's a strong statement. Okay, so the Iranians were afraid that they would be boxed in. They were afraid that a Saudi, Egyptian, Jordanian, UAE alliance, that this would effectively create a massive counterbalance, boxing them in the Middle East. And so the Iranians struck out using Hamas. Now, my guess is that they didn't think Hamas was going to succeed in this terror attack as far as it did. They probably believed that Israel's wall was going to hold, this is not the first time that people have tried to breach the wall. They probably figured that they would attack with 1,500, 2,000 terrorists. Pretty much all of them would be killed. But they would end up killing a couple of hundred Israeli civilians and kidnapping 10 or 20 of them. And this would be enough to create a serious Israeli military response, but not enough that the world would actually be okay with allowing Israel to do that sort of thing. And so it drives Saudi off the ball in terms of creating a peace deal with the Israelis. That was probably the original intent. And then it turns out that Hamas succeeded beyond its wildest imaginings. They ended up killing 1,500 people inside Israel and kidnapping over 200 people. They GoPro'd it, they videoed it. They couldn't help themselves because this is how much they hate Jews. And so Iran, I think, feels a little bit like the dog that caught the car. Hamas is about to get taken off the board. Hamas was one of their knights on the chessboard. Hamas is about to get completely destroyed and eviscerated, as well it should be. And the last thing they want is probably Hezbollah, which is a significantly more powerful piece on the board. It's like a rook. They don't want that being taken out by the Israelis as well. So instead, they're sort of prodding around the edges. But all of this, again, is the result of the success of Israel's military activities right now. Are you tired of the lies and the twists of the mainstream media talking points?
Yeah,
me too. Join me in my new
I
series,
feel
Facts,
like
where I
you
dismantle and bring truth
are
to
part
this
of
tyrant
those
mainstream
lies.
agenda.
When the tides of war seemed insurmountable, when all hope appeared lost, extraordinary leaders emerged to defy the odds. The Savior Generals. Introducing Victory and the Savior Generals, a new ebook by historian and Hoover Senior Fellow, Victor Davis Hanson. Are you ready to unlock the secret of history's most remarkable leaders? Witness how these exceptional leaders harnessed innovative thinking, a contrarian perspective, and a
I want to tell you the story of a young man named Tyler. Tyler is 22 years old. He attends church most weeks. He has a job at the local electronics store. He enjoys playing video games in his spare time. He has one or two close friends from high school that he sees once in a while. If you were to have a conversation with him, you'd come away thinking that he was a quiet but thoughtful person. What no one knows, though, about Tyler is that he's a frequent porn user. He doesn't believe he's an addict. He just uses it as a means to calm his anxiety and give himself a sense of relief after a
It actually gives you anxiety, so don't be watching porn.
hard
bad
day.
for
To
your
Tyler,
brain.
his pornography usage feels calculated. Sure, he's thought about quitting from time to time, but ultimately he feels like it doesn't impact any other aspects of his life, so his desire to quit has really dissipated. He knows God's not a big fan of it, and sometimes he will feel guilty. And when that happens, he asks God for forgiveness. And at the end of that, he usually feels pretty good. But here's the sad thing that Tyler didn't realize till his early 30s, was that he allowed pornography to invite him into a fantasy land that would pacify his motivation, his desire, and his purpose. If you don't want to make this mistake, keep watching. Remember this, porn pacifies people to buy into a reality that doesn't exist. Think about the sexual element for a minute. Pornography enables almost instantaneous sexual gratification with zero risk and zero effort. That's not real life. The truth is that God has instituted good and natural motivators that should push us into action. Think about it. The fact that you have a desire to eat pushes you to work. It drives you into the action and risk of applying for a job and showing up at that job and enduring the challenges that might arise. But the action is nulled because you can get it from the screen, right? But ultimately, if you're walking in God's purpose and his design, then that desire, which is a good desire, is an okay desire, is going to push you to become the person that you would desire would actually want to be with, right? It begins with transformation. It begins with growth, looking in the mirror and saying, okay, man, nobody is going to want me as I am right now, and rightfully so. Let me continue to grow. Then pursuing somebody, taking that risk of rejection. And why do you take that risk? Well, because you have the desire, you have the motivators. Now, I should definitely put a caveat here. Your desire to pursue somebody shouldn't be only motivated out of your sexual desire, right? There should be other elements in there as well. But that is an aspect of it. And when it comes to pornography, this is something that is being kind of squelched. So you're pursuing somebody, you're loving them sacrificially, you're navigating the ups and downs of a relationship and the challenges that come with that. You're seeking to serve them and help them grow closer to God. And ultimately, if that works out and marriage is on the horizon, when you enter that, you engage in selfless sexual intimacy. But that all begins with that deep desire, right? It pushes you into action. It pushes you into risk. This is a key thing to remember next time you're tempted to watch pornography. When you pacify the desire, you nullify the movement. By watching pornography, you are stifling the movement that God wants to bring about in your life. Here's how I think about it. Pursuing God's calling on your life requires risk, whether that's building a relationship, starting a business, being vulnerable, seeking to serve people. You have to put yourself out there. You have to take these risks.
Yeah, anything that... I would say this for anything, honestly. If there's anything in your life that doesn't require a risk, then it's probably not good for you. That doesn't require like an immediate risk. Like usually there's risks for everything, you know, but most things, if it doesn't require an immediate risk and you feel like it's going to make you feel good, it probably isn't good for you.
Risks. You have to be okay with receiving rejection. But in order to accept the possibility of rejection and failure, you need to be secure in your identity and who you are. The really troubling thing is that porn kills confidence. It kills identity. It kills internal security. So that being the case, the idea of stepping outside of what we've grown accustomed to in our kind of safe bubble of fantasy land, the idea of stepping out of that seems that much more intimidating. So how do we begin? How do we begin to build and stop pacifying these good desires? First, we must take the words of God to heart when he says, flee sexual immorality. We need to flee it. It is deadly. It is dangerous. It is waging war on our souls. And one of the practical ways that you can do that is to just eliminate temptation in your life as best you can. Very practically, unfollow people on social media that tempt you. Get website blockers on your computer and on your phone. And one of the other things you can do is be accountable. One of the best services that I've come across is Covenant Eyes. They will monitor your search history and they'll send a report to somebody in your life.
I don't know if I
think
think
that
that
I have a link
I don't
that
know
can
if I
offer you
think that
30
that's
days
the
free,
best
and so you
idea
can try it out,
is
see
for
if it
you to
helps you, see if it
have
benefits you.
something
I really
tell
do hope that it will. If you're interested in that, click the link in my description. It is an affiliate link, but I truly support the work that they're doing
I don't
there.
know if that's the best way for you to.
Sexual
I think that's
immorality
probably
and
one of the
fleeing
best ways
sexual
for you to
temptation,
stop.
You need to come face to face with
is
what
just
is real
to
and stop making
pray about it.
excuses for your actions. You need to take responsibility. You need to take accountability. I want you to be really real with yourself right now. Are you a Christian? Are you a non-Christian? Maybe you're a Christian that's put on a face for a long time and you're just scared to admit that this is an issue because it's confessing something about yourself that you held as your identity, that I'm this good Christian. And now the idea that you have to admit that you're not as far along as you portray yourself to be, that's painful. But what God calls you to today is to be real with yourself and real with him because he already knows where you're at. He wants you to humble yourself before him. And in that, you will receive forgiveness. You will receive healing. And he wants to call you into something greater. He is calling you into something greater, to take dominion. But you can't do that if you're not taking dominion over your own life, over your own decisions. And ultimately, that's not just about willpower. It's not just about, I'm going to try harder. You need to be committed to God, and you need to pray to him and surrender to him, and in him you will find that strength. And as you find the strength, you're going to begin to take dominion over these different areas of your life, decision by decision. Oh, I'm scrolling on Instagram and I see somebody attractive and that tempts me or that triggers me. And I'm thinking, okay, I'll watch this other thing. No, you're going to say no to that decision. You're going to say, no, I'm going to continue to follow God.
And
I'm going to pray
more and more you do this, the easier and easier it will be to stop. The more and more that you make that decision that, no, I'm not going to feed into that temptation, the easier it's going to be to make that decision again.
Woman of discipline, I can say no to these temptations because I am a child of God and his spirit lives within me. As we glorify God and stepping out of this fantasy land, that's where we find our most fulfilling life in him, as we're delighting in him, as we're glorifying him by continuing to rely on him in everything, not on the escapism of the past that made us feel warm and fuzzy, that we relied on to give us a sense of relief or a sense of joy or pleasure. No. We put that aside, and now we're looking to Christ, and we're looking at his calling on our life, and we're taking dominion over these things in our life.
And this
that's
doesn't
gonna-
just have to
man,
be
that's gonna fuel you.
attributed
That's
to
gonna
porn.
propel
This
you.
can
That's
be
gonna
to
launch
any
you. You're gonna begin to see
this
so
can
many
be to
aspects
any,
of how God has
like
gifted
drug
you that you never
addiction,
saw before,
anything
because you were so pacified
life.
and subdued by this pornography in your life. But now, when you're free, man, oh, you can just see all these avenues, all these doors open up because you're stepping outside of what is safe and taking risks and being okay with rejection, because ultimately you know where your identity is found and you have confidence in who God has made you to be and where he's taking you. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, subscribe, because I'm putting out new videos every single week. A huge shout out to everyone on Patreon. You guys know it's my heart, it's my mission to continue to make content on this channel that equips people to follow Jesus daily. Pornography addiction is something close to my heart that I think so many people struggle with, and I don't want to compromise in what I say on these videos, but that often means that monetization isn't that good, and I want to stay independent. I don't have to take a lot of different sponsors or things like that that will kind of muddy up the content. And so you guys, through your support on Patreon, enable me to just focus on making gospel Christ-centered content that can go out and be shared to the world. If you want to help me continue to do that, I ask you to sign up on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. That makes a huge difference for this ministry, so I'd ask you to consider it. And thank you so much for all of you who do sign up. I will see you guys next time. God bless.
I chose Wix for my business because of its massive scope for functionality and freedom of creation. Being able to integrate and change and develop at my own pace. I offer a range of products and services. To manage it all from one place is essential. It gave me time back in my day to get going on actual projects. It really just made everything feel.
How does this sound? A paycheck every month, even if you do not have a job. It is called Universal Basic Income, and it's gaining in popularity.
Cringe.
Be giving money whether they choose to work or not.
What happens when you give $500, no strings attached to people? What did you
It's
find?
a no, it's a bueno, mi amigo.
Number one, people did not stop working.
If you told me 3 months ago that we would have an extended conversation in any debate here on planet Earth about universal basic income.
A one-year expansion of the child tax credit led to a historic 46% decline in the U.S. child poverty rate. It dropped from 9.7% to 5.2%.
How big of a lifeline were these pandemic-era programs, including the expansion of the child tax credit, for our families?
It was a huge difference for families and for kids. They were able to pay their rent, they were able to pay for food, they were able to pay for childcare. And the difference that these dollars made in these kids' lives could have lasted for a long time if we had been able to extend them, and particularly extend the child tax credit.
A lot of moms out here, they struggling, man. This free money is a blessing.
The answer is it does cause inflation. That's what causes inflation, when you spend money you don't have to give to people who don't deserve it.
What happened to our work ethic in this country? And I think you're right. You know, it was exacerbated with the COVID lockdown. People got comfortable sitting at home, working from home, wanting to get paid more and do less work.
We're living through a time of financial and global crises. The COVID pandemic laid bare the
Get out of
inequalities
here
in our society and further exacerbated the already unconscionable economic inequalities in the United States and globally. Usually in such desperate times, governments take drastic measures to try to better society. In the past, those measures have led to increased government programs like Medicaid and Social Security. During COVID, the drastic measures amounted to a couple checks in the mail and a child tax credit that expired the second we were all ready to take
and
our
look
masks
at
off
the
in public
amount of
again. Now, more than
inflation
any
that
time
it
in our
caused.
history, the idea of a universal basic income, a set amount of money paid regularly to everyone unconditionally, should
Get
be
out
more
of
popular
here.
than ever.
Go to
And yet,
sleep.
Decades of misinformation and a governing body that is so dysfunctional that it can barely even pick a leader, let alone pass major legislation, means that inaction on UBI seems permanent. This, despite the fact that it has bipartisan support, including support by billionaires like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, presidential candidates like Andrew Yang, and even the king of the conservative free market libertarianism, Milton Friedman. UBI, of course, isn't a silver bullet or an easy fix, but decades of data and experimentation show it has a lot of promise. It's just apathy and
Should I
political
attack
inaction
this guy?
at this point.
Yeah, I'm
holding
gonna
it.
attack
So,
this
let's
guy
make
because
universal
it
basic
looks like
income
he's
something
about
better,
to try to
shall we?
attack
Roll the
me.
intro.
So fuck him.
Thank you to my partner on today's video, Factor. You know that I hate cooking. We've established this. That's why I
Oh,
love
what a
Factor. Not only
pussy.
that, but the holidays are right around the corner, which comes with a lot of family obligations, office Christmas parties, not for me because I am my own boss, and a lot on your plate, literally and figuratively. You don't need to also think about having to cook for yourself every day on top of all of that. Plus, I know
These
that I tend to
magic
get like sugar
winds,
hangovers
bro.
all the time during the holiday season, and I just need a few meals to eat that I know are healthy and have veggies and protein without having to think too hard about it. Factor to the rescue. Factor delivers fresh, never frozen meals straight to your doorstep. No shopping, prepping, or cleaning up.
What the fuck is
and they're
going
ready
on
to eat in
here?
just 2 minutes. And this ain't your grandma's TV dinner, okay? Factor's meals deliver serious flavor.
Why
I love
can't
their
I-
Indian butter chicken.
What
It's
the
fresh and
fuck?
healthy and ready right away while I'm in the middle of a busy day preparing these videos for you. You could say that Factor meals literally fuel this channel. Wow. And as a
What the
special
fu-
offer just for
I
my viewers,
can't
head to
fast
factor75.com
forward
or click
this
the link
shit.
below and use code LEGIA50 to get 50% off your first Factor
Get
box.
him.
Thanks, Factor. Okay, let's get into the basics
Ow.
of UBI because it can seem relatively simple, but it actually has a lot of nuance to it. Generally speaking, Universal Basic Income is a government program where every citizen receives a set amount of money regularly and unconditionally. The goal
These
being to
winds are
alleviate
fucking
poverty
me.
and give everyone a floor to stand on. The question of exactly who gets the money, all adults, children too, how frequently they get the money, once a year, every month, how much money that should be, $1,000, $500, as much as is sustainable, and how it should be taxed, like a negative income tax, a corporate tax, and income tax, are all variables and are all up for debate. Proponents of UBI point to the importance of a basic income, a ground to stand on, especially in the face of increasing innovation like AI that could put upwards of a quarter of Americans out of a job over the next decade. Additionally, a basic
UBI
income that is
does
unconditional,
make
meaning
more
everyone
sense
gets a
to
no
me than a
income
lot
or
of
work
other
requirements,
of
means
these
that those who need
socialist
help but can't currently
programs,
benefit from government
but
programs for
UBI
various
still
reasons, but still
just
get the help
seems
they need.
cringe
For
as
example,
fuck.
someone who needs to receive disability insurance may not have the ability to go to a doctor to get the paperwork necessary to verify their disability. It would mean fewer people falling through the cracks in the red tape and getting their desperately needed benefits denied or cut. It would also mean a reduction in bureaucratic oversight because there would be no need for analyzing whether or not someone qualifies. Everyone gets the money no matter what. It also removes the paternalism
Get out
of
of
government aid programs where third parties get to come in and decide how or whether a poor person gets to spend the money given to them. It provides common dignity and respect to recipients that is lacking in
Common
current government
dignity?
programs.
What do you
It would also
mean?
benefit the economy as it would give people the opportunity to leave
I
work
guess
and
because
seek additional
everyone's
education.
getting
It would put
it,
more
then you
power
wouldn't
in the hands
feel
of workers
ashamed
because
of
now
it.
no one would be quite
That's
as
probably
beholden
what
to
she
a
means
job
by
where they're
that.
being underpaid and mistreated, restoring a power balance that's been lost as income inequality has grown. Studies have shown that it would also increase happiness and reduce anxiety because the only people who believe money doesn't buy happiness are the ones who've never been poor because the relief that comes from knowing you have
No, money
long-term
doesn't
regular income,
buy
even if that income
happiness.
isn't enough to live off of, but is enough to ensure you have food
mean,
and
it
shelter,
can help
creates
with-
so much mental and emotional relief,
Make
and
it
that
so that
does
you're
lead
not
to happiness.
stressed
It also leads
out
to increased
by
sense of self-worth and efficacy, which can lead to better job performance, better parenting, and an overall higher quality of life. Having a guaranteed income would also lead more people to take entrepreneurial risks, start that business they've been dreaming about, thereby further stimulating the economy and creating more jobs. Proponents of UBI also point to the fact that there is exceedingly economically valuable labor being done outside of the paid workplace, especially by women in caregiving roles. UBI would recognize the value of that labor and allow people to take time to care for children or the elderly where they normally would not be able to. UBI would also allow people in abusive or unstable homes more freedom to leave. Instead of simply rewarding rich people for the act of hoarding money in the stock market and moving it to offshore holdings, activities that notably do not stimulate or add to the economy.
I mean, that's not really what they do most of the time.
UBI
but-
would help lift people out of poverty, give them
Okay.
dignity and freedom of choice, and allow them to be more productive members of society. And that all sounds very utopian and nice, so why is there such resistance to the idea of a universal basic income? We'll get to the present day objections in a moment, but one reason for inaction on UBI is because of the long history of vilification and overcomplication of the idea. The idea of some form of universal basic income has been around for centuries. English statesman and philosopher Thomas More, in his 1516 book Utopia, describes a society where every person receives
I haven't
a
read this
guaranteed income.
book,
His
but I've
reasoning
heard
goes,
about
no
it.
penalty on earth will stop people from stealing if it's their only way of getting food. Instead of inflicting these horrible punishments, it would be far more to the point to provide everyone with some means of livelihood so that nobody's under the frightful necessity of becoming first a thief and then a corpse. Thomas Paine, the writer and pamphleteer who wrote Common Sense and other pamphlets that were influential to the start of the American Revolution,
Thomas
also
Paine
wrote of
is
a
cringe
universal
as
basic
fuck,
income in
bro.
his essay Agrarian Justice from 1797, in which he proposed a universal social insurance program funded by a 10% tax on land inheritance, saying, "Men did not make the earth. It is the value of the improvements only, and not the earth itself, that is individual property. Every proprietor owes to the community a ground rent for the land which he holds." The sentiment was repeated in 1848 by Belgian socialist Joseph Charlier, who recommended a territorial dividend to generate regular income for the people. And again by American political economist
Shit.
and journalist Henry George, who proposed a broad social
gotta
support
figure
system
out
from a tax
something
on
to
land and
make
natural
more
resource
money.
value, such that social support would be distributed to residents as a right instead of as a charity. The idea being that economic value derived from the land should belong equally to all members of society. Nobel Prize-winning British economist James Mead similarly suggested in the 1930s a form of social dividend to share the wealth produced by the land and by
No,
previous
fuck
generations.
you, I'm not paying you. I'll do that though.
The idea of a UBI was particularly popular around that time in England. During World War II, the Beveridge Committee, led by British economist William Beveridge, developed a proposal for a new welfare system, including unconditional allowances for children. One member of the committee, Lady Rice Williams, argued in favor of universal income for adults as well. She was also the first person to develop the negative income tax model, which Milton Friedman later popularized. We'll get into what that means later. World War II also saw an unprecedented expansion of government services in the U.S., especially in the form of the GI Bill, which helped provide jobs, free education, and housing to returning veterans, and laid the foundation for the economic expansion that followed after the war. Taxes on excess profits, so businesses weren't profiteering from the war, helped to fund these greater social programs. Despite the fact that the government felt the pinch of the costs of war, it still made huge expenditures in the face of a crisis in order to ensure that its people, or most of them because racism and sexism, were provided for. But because of the nature of these programs, which were based on need and included the paternalistic arm of the government to determine whether or not someone was eligible, which included baked-in biases against women and people of color, by the 1960s, a civil rights movement was mobilizing for further government action. Martin Luther King Jr. was a proponent of UBI, proposing in his final book,
yeah, cringy, bro.
He pointed out that government aid programs have a common failing. They are indirect. Each seeks to solve poverty
I fucking hate
by first solving something else.
When,
I am now convinced that
obviously this person isn't a conservative, but I hate when conservatives try to use Martin Luther King as, like, to say anything, you know? Because he definitely wasn't a conservative.
Proved to be the most effective. The solution to poverty is to abolish it directly by a now widely discussed measure
Whoa.
of guaranteed income. The Black Panthers' 10-point program called for employment or guaranteed income for everyone. Feminist proponents of the wages for housework movement called for income separate from labor as a way to weaken the prominence of the male breadwinner model. On the other side of the political divide, neoliberal economist Milton Friedman argued as early as 1962 in his book Capitalism and Freedom that a negative income tax would help contribute to a universal basic income and create a sense of everyone being in it together, saying we might all of us be willing to contribute to the relief of poverty, provided everyone else did. He saw negative income taxes as a way to replace the entire welfare state and overcome administrative inefficiencies. Negative income tax isn't exactly the same thing as a basic income, but it functions similarly. Basically, the government would give everyone cash and then apply a tax to that government payment based on income levels, so everyone would receive the cash, but then wealthier people would ultimately have it taxed away so that it mainly benefited lower income people. It has largely the same effect as if you give out a basic income and then increase income taxes so that people in the higher tax brackets pay more to offset the cost of the UBI, but the negative income tax is just more palatable.
That person just was really weak. I thought that since they had so many people, they were going to be good.
Push to fight the war on poverty was met with increased push for a universal basic income as well. A document signed by 1,200 economists at the time called for guaranteed income for every American. Richard Nixon, of all people, introduced the Family Assistance Plan, which would have provided additional cash to poor families through a negative income tax, which would have provided up to $1,600 or $13,000 in today's money per year to a family of four. It was his response to calls to replace the welfare system. It never made it out of the Senate Finance Committee, though. By the 1970s, the main competitor to basic income and negative income tax was the Earned Income Tax Credit, which comes in the form of a tax credit on your year-end tax form if you earned below a certain threshold. The amount of the credit varies depending on income and whether you have children. This was more attractive because it had certain limits based on income and children, meaning that it wasn't unconditional, and it was a tax credit instead of income paid straight into the pockets of Americans in the form of a check, which feels less socialist. So the Earned Income Tax Credit and its proponents won out in the end. Today, renewed interest in the idea of a UBI has been spurred by growing income and wealth inequalities made all the worse. I need to figure something out. Andrew Yang, as candidate for the Democratic presidential nomination in 2020,
he actually didn't seem that bad.
$1,000 per month to be paid to everyone over the age of 18. Pope Francis, in a 2020 Easter letter, wrote that a universal basic wage would ensure and concretely achieve the ideal, at once so human and so Christian, of no worker without rights. And now with the explosion of AI driven by ChatGPT and other recent innovations, coupled with the growth in the labor union movement and fight for rights of low-paid service industry and gig workers, means that a UBI is once again being examined as a potential solution to all of society's ills. And during COVID, the government did get a little bit more comfortable with the idea of direct cash handouts to citizens through its COVID stimulus checks. And in 2021, the government took an additional step
and look
by
at what the
expanding
fuck
child
it's
tax
doing
credit
to our
include monthly
economy,
payments
though.
and removal of work requirements for parents. This alone affected nearly
People have never
of
been
all
poor.
children in the United States. One in three,
I mean, they
including
have been, but
52%
like
of
in
Black children,
recent
and
years.
41% of Hispanic children, and lifted 3.7 million kids out of poverty without any sign of reduction in the participation rate of parents in the workforce. And when the child tax credit expansion ended in January 2022, those 3.7 million children fell back into poverty. It proved beneficial to children and families, but showed the serious shortcomings that come from short-term provisions like COVID stimulus checks and a single year of child tax credits. It's not enough to move the needle in any meaningful way or to reap the full benefits of a UBI scheme. A study out of Columbia found that a permanent expansion of the child tax credit would have generated 10 times as much revenue as it cost in better health outcomes, increased education attainment, and more. And that highlights a major problem facing any legislation aimed at permanent universal basic income. No one's ever done it before, and all the projected outcomes are just educated guesses at this point. And that's a hard pill to swallow because it's a lot of money up front, especially for fiscal conservatives and those in higher income levels, including the people who run this country, who would be tasked with helping to fund any sort of UBI measure. That's not to say, however, that there isn't heaps of promising data from pilot programs all over the world that have been testing various UBI schemes for decades with very promising results. In the 1970s, when UBI and negative income tax was gaining popularity due to the war on poverty and Milton Friedman, a series of experiments were conducted in cities across the country where they tried various cash grant sizes and different rates of phasing out the grants based on income to take a detailed look at how different components of a UBI scheme would affect outcomes. Unfortunately, analysis of the outcomes of that experiment at that time were done by those in favor of the earned income tax credits and not negative tax schemes. So therefore, they were likely biased and incomplete. And they found that those receiving the money benefited personally and financially, but that there was a modest reduction in the number of hours that they worked and the amount of money they earned. And this was enough to spook Nixon and lead many at the time to declare the experiment's definitive proof that UBI and negative income tax don't work and lead to laziness in its recipients. However, numerous analyses of the data in the decades since the experiments were conducted paint a very different picture. The Brookings Institute noted that the experiments relied on self-reported earnings information. When official government records were referenced, the effects on labor hours and income disappeared. It's also important to take the full context of the situation into account. Researchers at the time didn't find any evidence that workers were dropping out of the workforce entirely. The reality was that people were working less on average because of longer spells of unemployment, indicating not that they decided to just relax now that they had the cushy government income, which, reminder, none of these schemes involve enough money to live comfortably on, but instead that they felt more safe leaving bad jobs in search of better ones or waiting a bit longer to find a job that was a better match, which in the long run could likely mean higher job satisfaction and less turnover, not to mention greater sense of well-being and purpose, which perhaps doesn't have a clear economic measure, but is certainly worthy of consideration. People were also withdrawing from the labor force to pursue more education or to take care of children or sick loved ones. The more recent study of the 1970s pilot programs found that the negative income tax increased the odds of completing high school by 25 to 30%, and there was some evidence that children in households participating in the program did better overall on standardized tests. The general conclusion of those who have studied the pilot programs conducted in the 1970s is that a national negative income tax big enough to eliminate poverty is a budgetarily viable option, and more recent pilot programs in the US have continued showing positive results. One slightly less obvious program is the annual dividend program in Alaska. Every year since 1982, the state of Alaska has given all of its citizens a check unconditionally from the Alaska Permanent Fund, a state-owned investment fund financed by oil revenues. The checks aren't enough to live on. They range from $1,000 to $2,000 per person per year, but it's been enough to wipe out extreme poverty in the state. Economists who have studied the effects of the program have found the dividend had no effect on employment overall, so no one was working less because of the money, but it has had an effect on fertility, encouraging families to have more kids. Since 1997, the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians in North Carolina have distributed a yearly casino dividend to spread the wealth generated by casinos on tribal land. The money is given to every tribal member unconditionally and generally amounts to $4,000 to $6,000 per year. Economists have found again that it doesn't make anyone work less, but it does lead to improved education and mental health and decreased addiction and crime. More recently, the mayor of Stockton, California, Michael Tubbs, created Mayors for a Guaranteed Income and spearheaded a pilot program called the Stockton Economic Empowerment Demonstration, or SEED, in 2019. The program gave 125 residents $500 per month for 24 months, unconditionally with no work requirements or strings attached. They then studied the results, and the results show that the guaranteed income works. It pulls people out of poverty, improves health outcomes, makes it easier for people to find full-time employment and take care of their children. More than 50% of the participants said that they could pay for a $400 emergency with cash, compared with 28% in the control group. Recipients also experienced statistically significant improvements in their mental health and well-being. The biggest share of the cash was spent on food, followed by utility bills, gas, and car maintenance. Less than 1% of the total funds were used to buy tobacco or alcohol, which is important to point out because those who support a more paternalistic approach to government aid always cry that the money will be used for nefarious purposes, while also spending their own money on drugs and alcohol and tobacco. But lo and behold, when you trust a poor person with money, they use it for things they actually need, like food and paying the bills. And while these pilots all provided promising data, they fall short in the same way that COVID stimulus checks and child tax credits did. After 2 years of $500 per month, or a total of $12,000 per person, the program ended. Many people saw great benefits over that 2-year period, but many were also left in the lurch when the payments stopped and they no longer had that support. Pilot programs have been important to gather some data to show the basic viability of a program of universal basic income, but it's truly impossible to accurately extrapolate that data into a model for what might happen were the plan to spread nationwide. And this is a major sticking point for many of UBI's detractors. There's no way to know exactly how it would play out because we don't have a program long enough or large enough to show us. It would take a little faith and actually just doing it in order to find out, at least at a state level. First, we must fuck around before we may find out. And because of this uncertainty, all sorts of objections as to the potential outcomes of a nationwide UBI have surfaced. One of the main objections is around funding. Who's paying for this? Andrew Yang, when he proposed a universal $1,000 per month stipend, set out a funding plan that relied on shrinking the size of existing social programs, imposing a 10% value-added tax or VAT on businesses, ending the cap on Social Security payroll taxes, and taxing carbon emissions. An analysis by the Tax Foundation found that this revenue-generating plan would only cover about half of its total impact on the Treasury. However, other estimates find that a UBI plan set to 100% of the poverty line would only cost about 1.5% of the gross national product per year on top of existing welfare programs. This would increase the cost of the federal government from 21.1% of the GDP to 22.6% of the GDP, a relatively modest increase. A means-tested income would have a lower upfront cost on paper because it would phase out as people make more money, meaning less out-of-pocket expenses for the government than if there was a UBI that was then funded through greater taxes in the form of negative income taxes or increased graduated income taxes. But the drawbacks of programs that create conditions like income amounts is that the benefits of less government bureaucracy is reduced because you need bureaucracy to make eligibility determinations. When everyone is eligible, no determinations are necessary. But a means-tested minimum income may be more politically viable than an increase in income taxes because it requires less upfront costs. Another common objection to UBI is that some people feel that no one should receive a free handout from the government. Everyone should have to work for their income. As I stated before, pilot programs have generally shown that no one works less when they receive a basic income. The point of the basic income is to be less than is necessary to live comfortably, but enough to avoid abject poverty in the richest country in the world. A UBI also acknowledges that having a job is not the only form of work that benefits society. UBI gives people the chance to finish high school, care for their children, care for their sick loved ones, attain higher education, or start a business. This is all work that is incredibly economically important, but not immediately income generating. There's also the objection that giving everyone a universal basic income would simply just raise the economic bar, causing inflation that would undo any potential benefit from the UBI. Proponents, however, argue that this is an overly simplistic view of how inflation works. The impact of a UBI would also depend on unemployment levels, taxes, the availability of goods, the rate of domestic production, the country's debt level, and the cost of fossil fuels. The pure act of increasing incomes doesn't necessarily lead to increased inflation. And the measures that would have to be taken to reduce inflation at all costs, like lowering wages and increasing taxes, are unattractive and don't create a world that we want to live in. So the reality is that some compromise has to be made. Compromises we actively already make today in our government, such as minimum wages. And the pure desire to reduce inflation can't trump all other considerations. Plus, the increased purchasing power and freedom to enter into small business ownership that a UBI provides would increase competition, which works to check price increases. There are also objections on the left from people who are concerned that a UBI would give legislators the green light to start slashing all other government programs, saying, well, there's a UBI, so no one needs free education or healthcare. This is a fair criticism and would likely require some form of controls to be put in place to ensure that general quality of life isn't lowered just because people are now receiving a $1,000 check every month. Another criticism from the left is just how popular the idea of a universal basic income is with rich people. Elon Musk says it's necessary. Richard Branson points to the sense of self-esteem that universal basic income could provide to people. Mark Zuckerberg is in favor of it. And as we know, anything that rich people support is largely out of self-interest. So what's in it for them? Well, for one, a UBI in theory is simple and requires few new regulations or rules. It also alleviates the billionaire conscience.
I do think that the reason why they want that is because they know that that money's just going to go directly back to them. You know? Like, people are going to get it and then spend the money and give it back to them. So...
Now that no one is in abject poverty, people will stop holding billionaires accountable for ending world hunger or whatever, and they can feel less guilt about exploiting labor and gaining more and more wealth. A UBI also creates...
I definitely don't think that that's why.
Sense of meritocracy, that if everyone gets a boost, then that means that the winners of the economic race are there because of their merits, their skill and expertise and talents and knowledge, not because of the dumb luck of inherited wealth and connections. Another fair criticism is that a UBI could lead to the creation of a ceiling, not a floor. Employers will now have no incentive to pay their employees a good wage because they can point to the UBI as supplementing meager wages. And while workers would likely have more bargaining power when they're not entirely dependent on a job to keep a roof over their head, this will likely mainly benefit the lowest paying jobs that most people don't want to do. But more competitive white-collar jobs, where workers are often paid in prestige and connections, those would be able to continue paying meager wages or even lower wages because they can point to the UBI as providing a floor for their workers, and those that would benefit would be the wealthier workers, those born into wealth, who then were less dependent on a salary to make ends meet. And so the fear is that more prestigious jobs would be filled by higher net worth individuals who could handle the lower wages. Because it turns out, a universal basic income is not a silver bullet that would solve all our problems. It would raise the floor, but it wouldn't do away with the inherent inequalities baked into our system. There may need to be new regulations put in place to ensure equality, something that then causes...
Every system is going to have inequality. So...
UBI to lose its appeal for many of its supporters who love it because of its supposed simplicity and lack of regulations. And there is no clear political path forward for UBI. Now that COVID is seen as less of an emergency and things are returning to some semblance of normal, the end of the expanded child tax credit in 2022, which was seen by many as a stepping stone towards a UBI, happened because Joe Manchin, a Democrat, blocked it, despite representing the state with the 6th highest poverty rate in the country. It turns out that citing statistics isn't enough to change hearts and minds, and short-term upfront costs almost always trump less tangible long-term benefits. Because the statistics show time and again that UBI would be beneficial for the segment of our country that needs it most. And it's more than just an economic policy. It recognizes the shared wealth we create when we lift each other up. It acknowledges that other humans are deserving of support, and it provides a level of dignity and a removal of social stigma that holds so many people back in the richest country in the world. And I will say, despite the fact that UBI is supported by many wealthy people, especially in the tech sector, I think this once again, as with all of my videos lately, comes back to getting money out of our politics. Hear me out. A recent Pew Research poll found that 63% of people in lower income households favor a UBI. 67% of people under 30 favor a UBI. 73% of Black respondents and 63% of Hispanic respondents favor a UBI. Only 8% of high-income Republican respondents favor UBI. The statistics show that the older, whiter, and richer you are, the less you support UBI. Given the numbers of old, rich white people in our Congress, this is basically a death knell for any hope of UBI being passed anytime soon. Studies also show that the expense of running for office, spurred on by increased campaign donations from big business and private billionaires, means that the only people who can even run for office and actually win that office are wealthy, which means they tend to be older and whiter because old white people have most of the wealth. Removing the influence of money from our politics would allow for a more diverse group of people to run for office, those that represent the interests of
I don't really give a shit.
Of color, the groups of people who are most likely to be in favor of UBI, and the groups that stand to gain
and that's
the most
just what you think.
Getting money out of our politics doesn't directly lead to a UBI,
sure.
but it does remove the barriers to creating a more equitable country for everyone, and that's something that I can get behind. If you liked this video, you might also like my video about how lobbying is ruining our democracy. Thank you to my Patreon supporters, including my newest patrons, and an extra special shout out to my
do agree that
patrons,
lobbying
Tobias
is
Sam,
ruining
Anthony
our
Giles, and Brett
democracy.
Pianta. If you're interested in
even though democracy is cringe as fuck.
Giving Tuesday.
Giving Tuesday.
Giving Tuesday.
Giving Tuesday is a global effort that encourages people to do good. This year,
Hey guys, what's up, and welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to be talking about this TikTok that has gone relatively viral, or viral enough that I actually opened TikTok for non-research purposes, which is already groundbreaking for me. And I got recommended this video like 7 times, and then I opened Twitter and it was there, so I don't know what the FBI man is up to right now, but clearly this was a sign from above or below that I had to talk about it. For better or for worse for you guys. There's this TikTok, it's about this trans woman and her pronouns. I wanna have a nuanced conversation about this because almost inevitably when I do talk about this, it does turn into the 2016/2018, whatever time is, of the binary, ironically, the binary of you're the devil if you fuck up someone's pronouns by mistake, and you are a sensitive ass bitch if you wanna respect people's pronouns. It's usually one of the two. Now, because I want this to be nuanced, I would like to
Yeah, don't respect people's pronouns. Fuck that shit, bro.
consider some level of middle ground where you can be reasonable and polite without going to either extremes, unless you want to go to an extreme, in which case I cannot stop you. So this TikTok seems to be a compilation. I was trying to find individual TikToks. I couldn't find them. So the reason I'm pointing out that it's a compilation is that I don't know how much has been edited out of certain of these TikToks, if anything. So let's just keep that in mind for the sake of context.
Looks like he's having a nice piece
She, her.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay, it's all good. But it was not.
Oh, disgusting.
I use she, her pronouns.
Gross.
Yeah, like it's like a knife in the heart. I
It's
also
a sir.
specifically ask ahead of time not to be called sir. Yeah, I'm just gonna go.
Your sir.
I think there are responsibilities we need to take for ourselves. Now, this particular individual in the TikTok, but this goes for whomever, honestly. Obviously, you want people to respect your pronouns. That's normal, and I don't think that's a crazy expectation. That being said, the majority of adults anyway, especially not older adults, but people who aren't in the TikTok generation.
Damn, bro, this
First of all, I
fucking
feel like
war
most
is
of the adults I
getting
know in that age
gnarly.
category, like older than me, are not super aware or familiar of trans ideology, trans rights,
Get
trans
'em!
priorities, whatever you want to call it.
Shit,
They're not
bro.
very aware of all
Look
that
at how
unless there's
much
someone they know who
explosions
is
and
trans and will tell them
arrows are
about it. You know what I mean?
coming
Like, most
at
people are
these
not plugged in
motherfuckers.
to that world or the LGBT community unless, again, they're part of it, in my opinion, from what I've seen. So that's completely anecdotal. So because of this, most of these adults, in my opinion, will take the gender cues they see on you and come to their conclusion. Now, we can have a whole
Comment,
conversation
sir, all
about whether
the
that's
time
fair,
on
what to do,
it.
change that, whatever. But
It's
the reality
based.
is, if I go to a restaurant right now, dressed like this, it may not be the most feminine clothing on earth, but I feel like generally speaking, we can tell she's a girly, okay? People will just take that and run with it. I could very well be trans. I'm not. The waiter at the restaurant realistically doesn't know. All they know is what they've seen. They add that up. They say, that must be a she. They say, hello, ma'am, hello, miss, whatever the fuck they say. In this particular case, I'm not gonna go into what I think about how they're presenting because that truly is none of my business, but the waiter took in how they were presenting and said, okay, I'm gonna use this pronoun. Now, obviously, that's an automatic process for most of us. We don't parse it like piece by piece like I'm saying it. For this person to react as in
I
it's a
just
dagger to the
say
heart, or they feel
whatever.
like they're stabbed in the heart, whatever the exact terms were, is dangerous, I think, for themselves. Because at one point, I think you need to find coping mechanisms, because the reality is, most people will not think that hard about what you identify as. And that's not meant to be an insult to whoever, but the reality is, most people at their job, that might be a minimum wage job, that is working them to the bone, isn't going to have this whole big thought process about just getting you your food. They're just doing their thing. They probably haven't even fully looked at you. You know what I mean? I'm not excusing or endorsing or any behavior. I'm just trying to look at this from the outside and be like, okay, do I really think there is malevolence here? And that's for the person to decide. But I also feel like the reality is, most
Get
people
'em.
will take some gender cues, call you he, call you she, whatever is paired with your gender, and move on. So for you to feel like you're stabbed in the heart every single time that this happens, I think is dangerous for you. Because if it really hurts you that bad, I can't imagine over years or over months how that will add up and affect your mental health. So I do think coping mechanisms have to be found on that end. Of course, the other end of that is once someone corrects you, you respect whatever they say, because again, it's just a question of being polite. If you meet someone who's called Nicholas and they say they hate being called Nicholas and they want to be called Nick, you're gonna call them Nick. It's literally that simple. With pronouns, I think it's that simple as well. I don't expect you to meet Nicholas and know he wants to be called Nick because it's not obvious and there isn't always a sign above someone's head being like, hey, by the way. So if you fuck up, in my perspective, it's not the end of the world. But once someone corrects you, if you decide to continue to be an ass and call them what they asked you not to call them, that's really, in my opinion, what's telling about you. But I digress.
Yeah, the Sweetwater starts at, okay, not. You just always
Bro,
like-
there's multiple videos of this person at different restaurants always complaining about being called sir. Maybe you need to figure something out.
It always hurts every single time. I was wondering if there's a manager I could talk to about something that happened. Yeah, I was called sir.
Like,
I just
you
was-
look like a dude.
I don't need to be called man.
Figure it
I
out.
just need to not be called sir. You know? Thank you. Did you call me sir? I just
Bro,
want to tell you that.
He's always, why is he always fucking filming this shit too? Like, it's like he wants it to happen so that he can get famous on TikTok for it. That's what's happening, for sure.
The person who gave me this called me sir. Call me sir.
Dude, that's
like,
so fucking
kinda
cringe.
Hurts a lot to get called sir. Very good. Thank you so much. No, yeah. Thank you. I'm not a sir. Nothing
Yes,
like
you
the
are.
goodness It is a knife in the gut when I get called sir. I feel like I need to tell him.
Why do they keep videoing
That
this?
hurts. It hurts more when it's not intentional, because it means like this is sir to him. I know you didn't mean it, but I'm not a sir. It's okay. I know you didn't.
You
mean it.
sound
It's just,
like
you
a
know,
sir.
It hurts. I know when people clock me, it's fine, but like it doesn't hurt. Thank you.
My personal bias may be coming into the chat here, but I do not think and I do not live by the motto that you should tell everyone your feelings all the time. If I did that, I'm pretty sure I would be, well, in prison by now, because there are times when I'm in class and there are times people have said things that I think are just dumb as hell. I don't feel the need to let them know that. And sometimes what they've said, I would call it offensive, but it's so dumb that it's insulting because they're making generalizations, right? But aside from in my head being like, this fucking moron, I move on. There is no need for me to tell them. I'm obviously not telling this person what to do, but once you've corrected a person, I really don't think it is helpful for you to tell them that they hurt you, because these are just random service industry people that do not know you. So once you've told them what the problem is, going beyond that and saying that it hurt your feelings, it's like, what are they supposed to do with that? Every single person here has apologized. Even contacting the manager to tell them that someone misgendered you is like, do you want to get someone's job put
cringe,
on the line
bro.
because they fucked up and then apologize for their fuck up? But you're still gonna go that extra step. At what point does this turn into weaponizing? You know what I mean? Like, you're weaponizing someone's fuck up, they apologize, and you still go to the person above them to tell them, hey, they did this, it was really hurtful.
They
And on
look
top of
almost
it, you're doing it on
exactly the
camera,
same.
so whomever you're talking to as a manager is aware that this is likely gonna go on social media. What do you think they're gonna do? They're gonna be put in a really hard position of, if I keep this person on, if this does blow up, if this does go viral, I'm gonna get hate and be seen as a bigot because I didn't fire the person who misgendered and apologized. But then, if they fire the person, if they're a good waiter, a good worker, whatever, they're not gonna wanna fire someone for an honest mistake they apologized for, right? So you put them in this weird position as well.
Call
That's
them
just me as an
sir.
outsider. Maybe I am effectively missing something.
Why record podcast on Zoom?
When you could use Riverside. Switch to Riverside.
I'm not sir.
Yes, you are.
Not
Oh, look
sir.
at that belly, bro.
Not sir.
That's-
But the guy who dropped
Why is this?
He called me sir twice in a row.
What the fuck?
Okay, so in this last example, it's a little bit different already because she did correct the waiter. Again, I don't know whether that's an honest mistake. I suppose I don't really know where we're trying to go with this.
Why is
That's
there
my
so
question,
many
because I
videos
understand
of
the
this
point of the
dude?
content, I suppose, is to show that you misgendering people can be hurtful. Now, if you don't do it on purpose, hopefully it's less hurtful to the person that's misgendered. If it's done on purpose, that's a different story. It's like, okay, so what is the conclusion here? Are we trying to get people to tell you that everyone who misgendered you
This is such a
an
boring
asshole and did
battle.
it to hurt your feelings? Or what are we trying to do? Because in my opinion, we should be offering a solution here. Because what is the solution to the issue presented? What is the solution?
Just
aside from wearing
Go by what you were born with.
a
That's
tag
the
that literally
solution.
says she, her, which sounds ridiculous and that nobody wants to do, I really cannot come up with anything aside from being extremely gender normative in terms of your appearance. So you'd have to look like the typical woman. And even then, people will still make assumptions. What if it's not about your gender, it's going to be about something else. Anyway, you guys can let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm kind of wondering if this type of content is going to have a resurgence, go viral again, because honestly, I really hope it doesn't, because I think it makes a lot of things worse, unless there are solutions included, which there aren't. I guess my final conclusion is don't call people ma'am or sir and use a lot of theys. That's my conclusion at this point. It's just extremely complicated out there. And I
Nah,
feel like
it's
the more
funnier
we
to just
have
call
more
them
specific identities,
ma'am
it's
and
great
sir.
on the personal level, like for you yourself, but
way
on the
funnier.
external level, on the social level, not everyone is on the same page. So the identity you have for yourself is an identity some people might not even know exists, mind you, and there we run into a lot of problems. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons as always, and I'll catch you guys next time.
On October the 7th, you tweeted, "Give them hell, Netanyahu. Enough is enough," and you got some blowback for that, as everybody
Yeah, a lot.
says anything about this. Were you
Yeah.
surprised by the scale of the blowback? Do you wish you'd phrased that tweet differently? Do you have any regrets about
Well,
it?
you know, I was upset because I had developed somewhat of a Muslim following on YouTube, and I was very happy about that. A lot of
I didn't
people on
know
the
that he
Islamic
had
side
that
of the
big
world
of
were
a
watching my biblical lectures,
Muslim
for example,
following.
and, you know, and I've had extensive conversations with Muslims on my YouTube channel, and you know, I burnt some of that up.
Hello everyone and happy Halloween. I hope
Oh,
everyone
what the
had a good one
fuck?
if you did
Why is he
something.
dressed
I
up
hope
like
you like
that?
the pumpkins me and my girlfriend carved, and I hope you like my outfit. I've gone as either the spectre of communism haunting Europe, thank you Vietnam for selling me this $5 hammer and sickle shirt, or I'm just like the ghost of Fidel Castro, who I never actually thought I looked like until I saw this photo of him. Which
That's
even though I have to admit,
cringy as
kind of
fuck.
looks like
Why
me,
would
which
you
is really
wanna
weird.
dress
Maybe I'm
up
actually
like
related
Fidel
to Justin Trudeau.
Castro?
And as I'm getting older, Halloween is just an excuse to like play horror games and eat loads of like pizza and donuts and stuff. So let me know what you guys did for Halloween if you had a good one. But today we're talking about something extra scary. We're talking about the Joker himself, Jordan Peterson. Now, about a year ago, nearly exactly a year ago, I made a video about all Jordan Peterson's Muslim fan base turning on him. And the reason they did it was pretty simple. He had a meeting with Netanyahu
Holy
and Ben
shit,
Shapiro,
there's
and
so
he was
many
promoting about
different
how great words was.
lords
And
that
it might
I can
even seem
pick.
weird to you that Jordan Peterson even has a Muslim fan base, but we're going to talk about that today. But he enraged them even further because once Israel announced its intentions for Gaza, he said, give them hell, and tagged Netanyahu in the comments. Now, realizing that a lot of his audience are still Muslim, despite so many of them turning against him last year, he has seemingly walked back a few of the comments, and he actually wrote like a pretty lengthy piece in the Telegraph, which he read out like completely on his YouTube channel, basically trying to walk back some of his endorsement of what Israel are doing. And it shows the fundamental contradiction with a lot of these people in like North American conservative spheres, in that they are massive Western chauvinists and they hate Muslims and they are racist as well, right? So they're trying to reconcile that with also being very pro-traditional values. So that's why they had like conservative Muslim fans in the first place. But obviously, even conservative Muslims are still pro-Palestine, despite the fact that lots of their governments have sold them out to the Israeli government. They are still pro-Palestinian while being anti-woke. So while they like Jordan Peterson for the anti-woke stuff, they don't like him for the pro-Israel stuff, and that's actually a red line for a lot of them. So we're just going to talk about all of this today and talk about, you know, the contradictions, talk about him walking stuff back, and just talk about like Western chauvinism in general. So all of that coming up for you today. Follow me on social media at The Tabernacle on basically everything. Consider becoming a patron if you want to support my work continuing for the future. And yeah, just check out everything down in the description. But like I said, Jordan Peterson has had a Muslim fan base for a while. And if I don't think I've illustrated the point enough, I might cut in some parts from this video I made a year ago. But like I said, Jordan Peterson, for the longest time, has been a Western chauvinist, and he has stood with people who are absolute, like, Islamophobic, racist bigots towards Muslims, Douglas Murray being chief among them, and they actually had a picture together the other day. But Jordan Peterson is also pro-Israel as a part of this, like many of these types are. Like, the intellectual dark web, even though it was often, you know, had a lot of criticism of religion in general, they were always anti-Islam more than anything else. And because they believe in Western chauvinism, they still believe a lot of Western values come from the Bible and Western tradition, which is influenced by Christianity. So that's why you get like new atheists like Sam Harris supporting Israel, because they firmly view it as Western values good, Muslims, backwards, barbarians will send us to the Dark Ages and stuff. Of course, it obviously helps they have a revisionist view of history in terms of how they depict Western Christian history versus how they depict Arab Muslim history. Like, you only have to play Assassin's Creed Mirage and read the actual history in the game to realize that maybe this view of history you've been fed your whole life about Muslim Arabs being backwards is pretty much based on racist propaganda and Orientalism. But nevertheless, despite all of that, Jordan Peterson did acquire a Muslim fan base. And a lot of Muslims liked what they saw as his crusade against wokeness. Now, although wokeness might not be in like the lexicon of conservative Muslims living in the Middle East or Asia or something, it's still something they liked because conservative Muslims don't like left-wing politics, conservative Muslims don't like challenges to a gender binary, or they don't like acceptance of the LGBT community. Although some Muslim countries do have different stances on transgender people, like Pakistan, for example, something that largely unites conservative Muslims, wherever you find them, is not liking wokeness, as we kind of understand it from the right-wing point of reference. So when Jordan Peterson starts, you know, even his birth of his social media career going against trans rights, talking about how using correct pronouns will lead us to gulags, that is something that can resonate with religious conservatives no matter where you find them, right? And there was actually a reporter who went to Lebanon and found his books everywhere. When I was in Vietnam and Thailand last year, Jordan Peterson books translated for those countries. Obviously, Thailand has a fairly sizable Muslim population in the south as well.
I feel like
but a
his
lot of
books
these
are
Muslims
probably
turned on Jordan Peterson
translated
at the end
for
of
a
last year
lot of
two
countries.
reasons.
That doesn't mean
because
that
he went
he
to a
has a
trip
big
to
base
Israel.
there.
He visited Al-Aqsa Mosque, but he visited it with the Israeli government. Obviously, you know, it's a really important place in Islam. It's on my sign right there. And also, he made a video that was a message to Muslims, but it really played up the Abraham Accords, a Trump administration initiative to try and normalize relations between Israel and the remaining Arab states that still don't have like normalization with Israel, right? But it was a firmly pro-Israeli initiative. And in this video, basically, it's just insanely racist, Orientalist, all that garbage. I'll play you a little bit of it. It's Jordan Peterson calling on Muslims to be peaceful, essentially. And he's saying that, you know, reach across the sectarian divide. And God forbid, even reach out to a Jew. Because we know you guys will hate Jews. So, you know, why don't you guys do that? And then we'll have peace in the Middle East and peace in the Muslim world.
And that the comments from the Muslim watchers and listeners to my YouTube channel and podcast have been so extraordinarily positive. And all this is lovely to see in the aftermath of the extraordinary Abraham Accords, which have laid out the possibility for peace between all the people of the book in an unprecedented manner. It is time for those of you in the Muslim world to stop fighting among yourselves, you Shiites and Sunnis, and also time to stop regarding the Christians, and even more specifically, the Jews, as your enemies, not least because you have the enemy located in the wrong place. Far more unites you with the other people of the book, as your own prophet himself, peace be unto him, forthrightly said, than what divides you. You are all threatened, in a very real sense, by the system of vengeful Luciferian ideas that currently confronts all that is transcendent, traditional, and valuable on the sexual front, on the familial front, on the conceptual front, on the psychological and sociological front. And I should also point out that it is not the individual carriers of the woke, politically correct, degenerate neo-Marxist ideas that should be regarded as the enemy either. Muslims, reach across the sectarian divide. Shiites, find a Sunni pen pal. Communicate with someone on the other side. Sunnis, do the same. And then, maybe, reach out, tentatively, to a Christian, or even, heaven forbid, a Jew. Because perhaps it is time for
I
those who
don't see
purport to
this
be
being
followers of God
racist.
to act like it.
Yeah, I hopefully played some of it for you there, but just insanely, like, racist. And of course...
How the
you've got
fuck
to go
was that
backwards.
racist? I don't see that being
Because
racist.
I don't even need to tell you that just because there is sectarianism in the world doesn't mean people from different backgrounds can't get on. Like, for example, Northern Ireland still has a load of sectarianism. Doesn't mean Protestants from Union backgrounds and Catholics from Republican backgrounds don't ever get along. It's the same in Iraq as well. Like, terrible sectarian violence.
I don't think that he was saying
but these
all
communities still get along. They
Muslims.
share the same country, right? And although you still have those problems, doesn't mean these people never get on with each other. And also completely ignores the history of Jews and Muslims together as well, where Jews and Muslims in various times in history have lived in peace and harmony. And if you go to places like New York, for example, there is always historic ties between Muslim
wasn't
and Jewish
saying
communities
that.
there.
What?
It's not really a binary thing that all Muslims just hate Jews, and that's probably playing into his views on Israel because he believes that the views against Israel from the Muslim world are fundamentally all about them being Jews, rather than it being this settler colonial project done on Muslims, and also done in the place where one of the holiest sites in Islam is, which the Israelis attack and stuff, right? Could never be that. It must just be because all Muslim people don't like Jewish people, according to Jordan Peterson. And maybe I'll play you some of the comments I read out from the other one, because they were really annoyed about both these things. They were really annoyed that Jordan Peterson would side with Netanyahu and go to this trip of Israel to promote basically the Israeli state. So he posted this on his Instagram on the 10th of November, had about 200,000 likes, but literally go on this yourselves. I'm not making this up. I didn't edit this. Every single comment in order is actively turning against him. So here's one. How can you criticize Trudeau so hard, rightfully so, and not put any critique next to this post against Netanyahu? You should have stayed true to what you said. You should uphold the morals you teach in front of everyone. A handshake that's stained with blood. With all the knowledge and intellect you possess, how do you fail to see the corruption and the evil they hold and gruesome vile acts they vomit against Palestinians? It's so sad to see you there. What the F, man? You lost a lot of people's respect. How come you haven't noticed anything wrong during your time there? Jordan Peterson is a good man. He's sitting with a wrong person. It's such a shame. How can a mind so great
I do
be so
think that
easily
Jordan
deceived?
Peterson has changed since he's gotten into the Daily Wire.
I'm glad these people are waking up. I genuinely believe Peterson is concerned about the flourishing of mankind against the repressive powers of tyranny, yet here he is in bed with a tyrant. And also that he was trying to basically say all the violence in the region is Muslims' fault, and it's because of Islam, and it's because you're intolerant. So if we're going to solve that, I call on you Muslims, be more peaceful, and just like work together to be more peaceful. I want to read a couple of the YouTube comments that responded to his video. In the comments saying, "Hi Jordan, I'm from Baghdad, Iraq, and I would like to tell you that Sunni and Shiites live together in Iraq peacefully. Some of our families contain a Sunni mother and a Shiite father, or vice versa. Some of my best lifelong friends are Christian, and I walked by a church last month and saw a priest saying goodbye to a smiling family leaving the church. Rest assured that the majority of Muslim people are peaceful and loving, but the actions of some bigoted minorities sometimes, unfortunately, leave a stronger impression." So that already had alienated a lot of Jordan Peterson's fans. Because, you know, a lot of people, that is the red line, not going to accept you supporting Israel, not going to accept, like, basically this racist view of Muslims as all, like, barbarians and inherently violent. But then it came that Jordan Peterson also endorsed Netanyahu's government's, like, disgusting, disproportionate pushback to the attacks from October 7th. So Peterson tweeted, "Give him hell, Netanyahu, enough is enough." And that is not ambiguous in the slightest. He's basically saying, do whatever you want. And that's what the Israeli government are doing. He's endorsing that. Same with our lovely leader of the opposition, Keith Starmer, reiterated it today, our Prime Minister, for leaders of the EU, all these disgusting people. Like, the only governments I can think have remotely been good on this is the Scottish government, the Irish government, and the Spanish government. It's pretty much like literally those three countries in the whole like Western sphere have actually said anything that points towards peace in the region and not giving the Israelis like a blank check to do whatever they want. Now, Jordan Peterson went on Piers Morgan where he spoke about both these things. If I can't play the video, I'm going to play the audio. And he talked about, you know, why he wrote this, because he realizes, oh, hang on a sec, maybe a lot of my income is tied to like Muslim fans who really like me. I've just endorsed someone like they absolutely hate doing terrible actions that the Muslim world is not going to forget. Let's try and walk that back a little bit. So listen to what he said to Piers Morgan.
On October the 7th, you tweeted, "Give them hell, Netanyahu. Enough is enough," and you got some blowback for that, as everybody who says anything about this. Were you surprised by the scale of the blowback? Do you wish you'd phrased that tweet differently? Do you have any regrets about it?
Well, you know, I was upset because I had developed somewhat of a Muslim following on YouTube, and I was very happy about that. A lot of people on the Islamic side of the world were watching my biblical lectures, for example, and you know, and I've had extensive conversations with Muslims on my YouTube channel, and you know, I burnt some of that up, and I'm not sure I did that. Well, I would say I'm certain I didn't do that in the most productive manner, and so do I regret it? It would have been better to do the long form, to have done the long form to begin with, you know. And Twitter invites and rewards a certain amount of impulsivity, and it wasn't. I don't know. Pierce, I don't know if it's ever time for impulsive action, especially when the stakes are serious, you know?
So do I believe that Jordan Peterson actually regrets what he said, as he seems to indicate there? No. Does he regret it in terms of ideologically? No. Does he regret it in terms of, oh damn, I have a lot of Muslim fans, and I've just said something that is basically unforgivable on top of the stuff I was doing last year? That's the main reason he cares about this stuff as well. Like, yeah, Jordan Peterson talking about being impulsive, being bad. This guy is absolutely unhinged on Twitter. Like, I've made like maybe 2 or 3 videos about his insane Twitter feed, and one time he was tweeting like 100 times in an hour, which included like multiple retweets and quote tweets of himself, tweeting the Joker like 5 times in an hour. Like, this guy's self-reflection.
That's just kind of funny.
It's like an alter ego. Like, the Peterson version of Tyler Durden is the guy who tweets, and this is the guy who speaks. But he also kind of like walked back some of his pro-Israel stuff. But I think it's really like a centrist take to try and appeal to his Muslim followers. So listen to this as well.
I don't think Israel's going away. but I don't think the Palestine isn't going away either. And so those things have to be accepted. It looks to me like they have to be accepted as on-the-ground realities. Now, the problem I've seen continually, I don't know, is that it's been convenient to use the Palestinians as an irritant to Israel in the West. And so the Palestinians have been held hostage. You know, the people who portray them as innocent victims presume that the Palestinians have been held hostage by the Jews, let's say. But I would say the Palestinians have been held hostage even more effectively by their own leadership and by those who are perfectly willing to use them as the front man, the expendable front man to irritate Israel in the West. Well, you can't get peace under those circumstances. You know, and so Palestine is a reality that isn't going to go away, and Israel's a reality that isn't going to go away. And the Abraham Accords started to recognize that, and there was move in the right direction. And if that falls apart, we're going to be back to where we were 15 years ago, except worse.
So again, talking about the Abraham Accords, which, like I said, is like the normalization of relationships between Israel and like a couple of Gulf monarchies and stuff. And that's not a good thing, in my opinion, because it's just all the Arab world's elite selling out the Palestinians and not representing their people who are overwhelmingly pro-Palestine. Like, have you seen some of these protests in the Middle East? They're insane. Like the ones I've seen in Yemen and stuff, like so many people. Like I thought the one I went to was big in London, which was like apparently 300,000 people. There was another one last week, which was upwards of 500,000 people. There's going to be another one on Saturday, which could be even bigger. And that's in the UK. The UK, which does have a big Muslim population, but at the same time, these countries overwhelmingly support Palestine. And Jordan Peterson acting like that, oh yeah, the leadership of Palestine is provoking Israel and they'll never have peace under those circumstances. Again, blaming the insurgents fighting occupation and apartheid because they started this whole thing, did they? Or are they a symptom of occupation and apartheid and colonialism, which Jordan Peterson seems to not realise because he's a Western chauvinist, right? He wants Israel to exist, but he probably wants Israel to exist even more than it does, which a lot of the Israeli leadership want to claim Gaza and the West Bank for Israel as well. They believe in this more religious form of Zionism, which they believe everything in the region belongs to Israel. So yeah, Jordan Peterson, I don't think really walking it back, but trying to be like, oh, you have to accept reality that Palestine exists and Israel exists. But anyway, he did write a lengthy article for The Telegraph, and I want to read some of it for you today. And he read this out on his YouTube channel. I guess this was like his apology, kind of, to the Muslims he offended. And it was called "This Unholy Axis of Iranian Thugs and Marxist Psychopaths is an Enemy of Muslims Too." Again, that is a weird combination. It reminds me of that tweet I saw today about apparently the only reason Ireland is anti-Israel is because Iranian intelligence agents or something. So the attack on Israel by the monsters of Hamas occurred not because Muslims and Jews are destined by religious necessity to be at each other's throats, but because Hamas's biggest supporters in Iran, a country run by thugs and deemed so even by its own people, had become concerned that the rulers of Saudi Arabia would continue in their laudable attempts to formulate a productive peace in Israel. 4 countries signed the Abraham Accords, a Trump-era initiative that should have garnered that ex-president for all his faults a Nobel Peace Prize. Behind the current signatories, the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco and Sudan, stood the Saudis, without whose tacit agreement no such steps would have been taken, and everyone knew it. Despite being snubbed so insultingly, and their consequent and justified anger, the Saudis had been strongly considering the continuation and extension of the Abrahamic peace process. In consequence, the totalitarian mullahs of Iran, working with Hamas, were driven to desperation, knowing full well that such an agreement would undermine and isolate them fatally. This is the same Iran, by the way, that the Democrats under Biden have failed to resist and control. I also find it funny how Iran is totalitarian, but a country run by a royal family that promotes Wahhabism is what? A free democracy or something? All this means, therefore, that the Saudis could have been on side 2 years ago had Biden seized the opportunity, thereby negating Hamas's and Iran's primary aim in attacking Israel. So here we are with Israeli and Palestinian blood once again being spilled. So in appeal to Muslims, there are many Muslims willing to believe conspiratorial narratives about Jewish people, which is just the most ironic thing considering Jordan Peterson talks about cultural Marxism non-stop. Many of these narratives, if one looks at their source, are deliberately spread by the brutal Iranian regime. I might inquire of the Muslims who accept such stories, is Iran your idea of a worthy Islamic state? I would also ask the Muslims to consider those in the West who have allied themselves with the cause of Palestinians in the days since the invasion. Many of those university students and radical professors you see as your allies are Marxists, like me, for example. Remember, the essential and absolute enemy of the communist utopia is the very religious practice you share with your Abrahamic brothers. Then there's the increasingly delusional alphabet brigade of the LGBT community, foolish and blind enough to assume that the commonality of hypothetical oppression is enough to unite. However, somehow, with the mullahs of Tehran and the gangsters of Hamas, this is useful idiocy on a scale undreamed of by the most extreme of Leninists and Maoists alike. Tell me this honestly, those of you desirous of genuinely practice your faith, do you really think you have anything in common with those who have hypothetically sided with you in the West in the past week? And tell me again how that alliance is more suitable to your faith and the recognition of your Abrahamic commonality with the Christians and the present-day descendants of the ancient Hebrews. I would argue that the Saudis and the other signers of the Abraham Accords have a stark choice in front of them, as do the disturbed and various peoples of the Islamic world. They can allow the thugs, particularly those in Iran and Palestine, to triumph. They can, in consequence, scuttle from the terrible tempting path of righteous destruction, continue the work already begun in uniting the people of the book, and thereby bring a productive, generous, wise, and lasting peace to this benighted but still not yet doomed and even potentially wonderfully green and blue orb. So it's probably like not surprising Jordan Peterson's grasp on international relations is like pretty terrible, considering he thought like the Russian-Ukrainian war was like about wokeness and stuff. But that's kind of how he's framing that. He's basically saying, Muslims who are so outraged at what Israel is doing,
I mean, can
you not see you actually have more in common with Israel? Because a lot of them believe in Judaism, even though a lot of Israelis don't actually believe in the religion or aren't that religious. And you should side with them rather than side with the Marxists in the West and the LGBT community, because you do not want that like degenerate ideology to spread to you guys, right? And he fundamentally doesn't understand. He's also blaming everything that's happening on Iran. Iran historically hasn't even been like the main backer of Hamas specifically, more Hezbollah. But even so, there are still Arab countries probably covertly still helping the Palestinians, and I would say the Saudis are probably one of them. But it's just interesting how he frames this, because he's acting like the governments and the monarchies of like Morocco, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia and stuff, that's representative of the will of the Islamic world, which is overwhelmingly pro-Palestine, and they side with the Palestinians because of the occupation, apartheid, and how Israel treat them, right? And that is like the main issue, and the main reason Arab countries have sold out to the Israeli government is not because they've suddenly realised that, oh, we have actually a lot in common with Orthodox Jews and stuff. It's just capitalism. Are you seriously telling me Saudi Arabia, which is one of the most conservative religious places in terms of its government, the people there just suddenly accept Israel? Like suddenly Islam is not important to them anymore. This key issue in the Islamic community is not important. They're just going to accept Israel, right? And everyone should follow their lead. Of course not. The Abraham Accords was worked on by Jared Kushner, who is firmly in bed with the Saudi investment fund, the government's own investment fund, right? And that investment fund has funded a ton of his stuff, and that's partly to do with the Abraham Accords. But yeah, it's just to create better business ties between the elite of all these countries. It's like Egypt as well. Egypt has good relationships with the Israeli government too, despite its people being overwhelmingly pro-Palestine. It literally is just nation-states governments selling out the will of their people to continue funding and helping with this Israeli apartheid because they don't have the will to stand up to it anymore. And also you have the US pressuring them in the background to actually normalise relations between all of them. But it's funny he thinks at this moment he can appeal to conservative Muslims' views on the LGBT community, or Marxists in general, or Marxist ideology, to try and stop them from siding with the Palestinians in this issue. It's just not going to work. Also ignores that there has been a lot of Marxist and socialist tradition in the Muslim world as well. Like the government of Afghanistan was like literally communist, and that's before the Soviets invaded. Like it was like an organic movement within the country to make it socialist. And there has been a lot of these movements throughout the Middle East, and even if they don't necessarily agree with Marxist view on social things, Marxists have historically helped Arab countries struggle against Western colonialism. And you know, Fidel Castro, very pro-Palestinian, most of the socialist world, very pro-Palestinian, and they've actually armed the Arabs against the Israelis, and they armed the Arabs against the colonialism by the West, right? So a lot of the Arab world do still remember, because even sometimes they're using the weapon still, that socialists and Marxists actually helped their struggle for independence, right? So even if they don't agree now with the modern Marxist views on, I don't know, LGBT rights, for example, they still do remember that Marxists helped their armed struggle, because that's what Marxists believe in as well. One more thing I want to note as well, Jordan Peterson appealing to conservative Muslims' views on the LGBT community is very interesting because of what Israel is perceived to be as well. Like Israel's propaganda, I made a video on this the other week, it woke washes its apartheid by promoting its LGBT community and how tolerant it is and stuff like that, right? Israel does that. And originally, Westerners didn't like Israel because they viewed it as a socialist state. They viewed it as a bunch of socialist Jews who made their own country. So a lot of people hated that originally. And people forget the US backing for Israel really became massive after the Six-Day War. They weren't originally like besties with Israel after the war because a lot of people who went to Israel after World War II and actually fought to create a state of Israel were actually people who had fought for the communists in World War II, right? Jordan Peterson needs to remember that if you're trying to appeal to conservative Muslims' views on social values, then they're not going to like Israel either. They might agree with some Orthodox Jews and stuff on certain things, but they're not going to agree largely on what is written into law in Israel about things like the LGBT community, which I would remind people isn't as good as stuff you get in like Western Europe, although Israel likes to pretend it is. Jordan Peterson has a very interesting view on this stuff, and a very simplistic view of, can't we admit that we're all anti-woke, so let's unite to fight the Marxists rather than fight each other? But it also fundamentally just doesn't understand why the conflict exists in the first place. It exists because of colonialism, apartheid, and this constant Israeli expansion into Palestinian territory, right? And if you're going to ignore that in your analysis, your analysis means nothing. And it just feels like Jordan Peterson's saying all this stuff to try and to get into the good books of his Muslim fans, but at the same time, he can't help himself. So he's trying to act like, oh, we should all unite against the left rather than fight each other, rather than trying to acknowledge or even analyze why the Islamic world do support the Palestinians. But anyway, that is it for the video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.
I mean, there is a point where it's like too much to call out, but I think it's worth calling out when you see it. Like Vosh's performativity, I think is very worth calling out. Like he comes off as very magnanimous, very courteous, very kind, very charismatic, very everything when he's at public events. He's a very good speaker.
Yes.
Such
a pleasure to speak with you.
Yes.
Likewise. Likewise.
Thank
you.
Nice
to meet you. Yes.
Thank you. Oh.
You can do it. Yeah, and then us. We finished. Nice. We did it.
But he's like the opposite of all of that. He's like a snake, right?
His subreddit is basically like Kiwi Farms, I think.
He knows what he's doing when he makes this comparison. The reason why people don't like Kiwi Farms is because of the narrative that was driven on the internet that Kiwi Farms doxes people and makes people kill themselves. I do not have any idea where he gets that comparison from or why. Well, I don't know why he would think it's appropriate to make that comparison. It's not at all. That's insane. That is an insane comparison to make. Especially when, remember, I should have links for this, but remember, it was Vosh's subreddit that got an admin warning for brigading other subs. They got admins that warned them, and admins that came to help our community because of how hard they were brigading. Remember that.
Oh, that person? You mean the person who, and then they have like the manifesto pre-saved to their clipboard, you know, like.
Yes, he's making the manifesto sound like a bad idea, but that's the whole point of the manifesto, is that when I make claims about people, I do a lot of work to like source it as well as I can, because I don't want people to make things up. So it's frustrating that he somehow tries to like make that a bad thing, right? We're like, oh, well, they got the manifesto right. Yeah, because I've sourced, like, these are all of the nice things that I've done for Vosh, okay? And I did a lot of nice things for Vosh. I went out of my way.
I don't know
to
what
be
this manifesto
nice
is.
Him, okay? I was willing to mute my stream and have combos with him when he was banned from Twitch. I always show the full context of what he's talking about. I deleted the Poppy sexual allegation video from my channel so that his early YouTube career would be besmirched by the sexual harassment allegation. I've defended and advertised him multiple times on my channel. I would the one. Remember when Vosh went on the show where he was debating against Bastia, and Bastia was my friend, and I was casted the deciding vote for the winner. I thought that Vosh did a better job, even when he hated me. I was the one that cast the vote for that. I took Vosh's side in the argument against him and RGR, or against when Doe was debating with RGR, even though RGR is my friend. I give him credit when he needs to. I side with him when I can. Even my community sides with Vosh when he makes good arguments. But I've done a lot. And then when he talks about me, it's insane. But anyway, I'm sorry. We're not gonna reread this whole thing, but I give a lot of examples of how Vosh totally misrepresents me. I do my best to give faith to him. But him writing that off was making fun of it. I think it demonstrates the weakness of his position because again, every time he talks about me, he never sources or cites anything. He just says a thing that is a lie about me, and then his community propagates that lie on the winds of their bullshit sales constantly. And it's so annoying. I reject this argument. Not beating the he lives rent-free in DGG's head's allegations with the Reddit manifestos though. No, I disagree with that. That's such an easy way to avoid all culpability or responsibility of a comment. Oh, I just totally lied about you. Wait, hold on. Well, look at that here. You are lying about me. And they're rent-free, bro. Rent-free, bro. Why are you writing about me, bro? Rent-free source? Rent-free, bro. No. But to say that I want to account for all of the lies that arguably one of the most damaging people against my career has told about me online, that's rent-free. No, that's not rent-free. Okay, that's me. Okay, cashing this dude's checks. Fuck that.
He wanted to fight back against the idea that the left was plucky and had no money or something, even though that wasn't the point being made. Stupid, asinine, low IQ beneath him. But that's what being angry does to you. Anyway, all things aside, I think it was.
So notice he doesn't actually present my argument. He has the false narrative of this is the full simulacra thing. Look at how much fantasy. We've built a whole narrative here on pure fantasy. So. First, we create the lie of the subreddit, okay? Negative subreddit posts. This is a lie. And then Destiny reads the negative subreddit post and I get upset. That's a lie. And then I go on stage because of these two things, and then I start making stupid arguments that he's not even really representing. And then this is also a lie. We'll say DA for Destiny arguments. This entire, and now people have this whole thing oh, Destiny, that's a spy-driven dude. He thinks that individual donations of his pack money, and his subreddit is Kiwi Farms 2.0. I think Destiny literally hated Vosh because his subreddit shit on him because they're basically Kiwi Farms, right? This entire self-contained little simulacrum, this whole thing is all built on lies and fabrication, right? It's insane.
I want to take this place, but...
Pandora loves Unboxed.
Welcome back, friends, to the shop on a very chilly Monday morning. We woke up this morning to 27 degrees. We made it, Jack and I made it home from our trip to Idaho. We were 4 days up in Stanley, and I've got a furious rant that has come out of, some of the way that we have been treated and some of the DMs, private messages, comments that we've received from the Idahoan people. Now, if you live in a cave and don't know what's going on, there's a lot of folks in Idaho that are upset of the mass exodus or ingress, the influx of people from other states coming in, seeking to find a place where they can live and be free men and women, right? Well, that is causing problems. It's driving property prices up, and it's just, Idaho people are really upset about this. Well, when I posted a video, of course, I started receiving a lot of really nasty, mean DMs, emails, comments from people basically saying, don't come here, get out, you're not wanted, you don't belong here. Well, that rubs me the wrong way because I think, I don't know, I'm assuming, of course they wouldn't know because I haven't really talked about this, but I have a very deep pedigree when it comes to Idaho. My dad's family lives in Idaho and has for generations. My dad was born there, his dad was born there, his dad was born there, 4 generations, and my dad's great-great-granddad owned the largest sheep ranch,
going to Idaho would be that big of a deal.
In the entire West. And he owned all that land around where Sun Valley sits right now. So, wish we had that today, right? So we have a rich heritage from Idaho. And so when I had folks that were reaching, or sending me comments and stuff, telling me not to come and not to be there, that made me want to furiously rant. You know who's to blame for the increase of property and the changing of the Idaho culture? It's not the Californians. It's not the Oregonians. It's not the Washingtonians. It's not the Texans. It's you. It's you. I have bought and sold a lot of properties, Mrs. W and I, and I've always known who it was that I was selling property to. I knew where they came from. I mean, those are typically the questions you ask. You kind of get to know someone, and you ask, and you learn about this, and why you're coming here, and of course, all these things. You guys are selling the property at exorbitant prices because you see your land as an ATM. You see your land as a way to cash in and to make a big profit. And I'm not faulting you for it. You have every right to do that. Far be it from me to tell you what to do with your own land. I don't want to be told what to do, and I expect you wouldn't do that to me as well. But if you sell your Idaho land to people outside the country because of the massive profits and counting your money, and as I said, looking at it as a massive ATM, then you were the one to blame. So you can't sell your property to someone from California that doesn't share your politics or your view on civics or the way that your local city should be ran, and then get up on your soapbox and start complaining about it.
I do agree
My
with
family
this.
lives in Idaho and has, as I said, for generations. They're not selling their land to make a profit. They're running their businesses. They're raising their families. They're having children. They're living there. They're living and they're enjoying the place that they own and the place that's of their birth. And our family I guess, our ancestral lands, right? So if you're upset about the carpetbaggers and speculators that are coming in, yeah, there is going to be some of that. There's going to be some folks from California.
Yeah,
Oregon,
people do
Washington,
need to
Share Your Values,
stop
but there's
selling their land
going
to
be a
these
lot
people
of like-minded people
who
coming
they
in.
don't think
people that don't
are
want to live
like-minded.
under the thumb of a tyrannical government. People that want to be able to do what they want to do, to be free to raise their kids without mandates, without someone nannying them, without a nanny state. So what you're getting, the influx, a good portion of that, are the country's best and brightest. It really is like a new frontier, so to speak. I've talked about the past when the West opened up, the most industrious, the most the biggest risk takers, the adventurers, the brave men and women got in their Conestogas and crossed the Rockies and risked everything to come out West and to start their life. And that's why we have this mentality out here. That's why we have such a can-do attitude and such a positive attitude. I'm not demeaning the East Coast, but the East Coast culture is very different than the West Coast culture. And I understand the frustration.
Yeah.
And I understand that the prices are getting higher and that it looks like it's bad. But you've got to, before you jump up on your high horse and start pointing the finger at everyone, you're responsible for it. You chose to cash in. You chose to make the massive profits. And who has that sort of money? Well, the people from out of state. You could have sold that land to a young family. Of course, you might get a half or a fourth, but you would have been putting your money where your mouth was. You would be keeping Idaho, Idahoan. So I don't know what to say. My pedigree with Idaho, as I said, is rich, and I don't appreciate any comments telling me that I can't come there and recreate, that I can't come and snow bike or visit and to get out and don't come back. No, you lost that opportunity. You guys sold your own land out, and now you have to live with the consequences. Not all, I'm not saying all, but I would imagine, it's always the new converts that are the ones that are the most zealots, that are always the zealots that want to come out and really die for the cause, right? If I had to guess, it wouldn't surprise me if the majority of these comments were people, guys living in their van that drove over to Idaho from some other place and now identify with them as being Idahoans and now are just very zealots for the cause and think that they should have it all to themselves and no one else should have it. The reality is, yes, in the resort areas in the mountains where it's cold, the prices are going up. Boise is growing like crazy, there's no question about it. But the majority of folks that are coming out of a city, they're not hardy enough and they're just not interested. They're not going to be moving into these rural areas. It's only the ones that are really the tough that can live in a place where there's Stanley or McCall, where it's really, really cold, unless you're talking about a second home. And you're going to have some of that, you're going to have it everywhere. So I don't know what to tell you, but don't cry to me and don't be giving me a hard time and sending me. I even had threats of violence for that trip over there this weekend. And I thought about that on the way coming back. I'm like, I'm not your enemy. I share your values. I understand where you're coming from. But the blame that you're pointing the finger, remember, you point the finger, there's what? 3 more? 3 more pointing right back at you. That's what it is. You chose money. You chose to sell your lands to people from out of state, and now that's what you have. So I don't know what to tell you. You're to blame for it, not the other people. I would not blame someone for trying to better their life. This is in our culture. It's a freedom that we enjoy in this country, and I would never fault anyone for trying to make a better way for their family or to find a place that shares their values. Land speculators, carpetbaggers, yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't like that, and I don't. That doesn't benefit anyone. But that's not everyone. I think it's a smaller portion of people than the good folks. So embrace it. You got what you paid for, and that's all I have to say. Thanks for watching. May God bless you and your families. Please keep us in your prayers, and we'll see you all on.
You're such a good listener, Thomas. It makes me feel so special.
You are special. If you don't mind, if you
Bro,
could just...
is that...
This makes me feel really special, too,
No,
because, Discover's giving me cash back
Is
on
that
debit, not just
fucking
credit.
Actually, Discover gives cash back on debit to everyone.
Everybody?
I don't think that is
Buddy,
Stifler's
you
mom.
could
For a second, I thought that was
All right, we're gonna watch
Stifler's
Ben DeBock's
mom.
Hamas propaganda.
So TikTok is filled with pro-Hamas people standing for the.
No, I don't like that. I can't get over it. Once a chatter told me that like Israelis do this and Ben does it as well, even though he's not Israeli, that the Israelis say Hamas on purpose. What? I can't unhear it now.
We're gonna go through some of their videos, and we will see what shining bright moral lights they have, how much nuance they can provide. This video is sponsored by our friends at Genucell.
What the fuck is Genucell? I love Ben being like, this is why the ethnic cleansing must continue until I feel sated, until my bloodlust has gone away. This video was sponsored by Genucell. With Genucell, you can change your genes or whatever.
Losing hope. Just remember that this hashtag, the ones that say stand with Israel, got millions of views, but the Palestine ones got multi-millions
Let's
of
go!
views.
Run it up! Wait, I don't get it. Why is that pro-Hamas?
Because all Palestinians are Hamas.
We almost triple. Don't ever let the media fool you. The people stand with Palestine. This is with all of the money that Israel.
First of all, I think that TikTok analytics to get a better assessment of what's going on is not the best way to do this.
It is if you want to know what people who are afraid to ask for more ketchup at a restaurant are thinking.
Okay, fair. I mean, that's you.
Yeah.
Are you talking about yourself?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Spends on propaganda. It doesn't matter. The people are still hashtagging Palestine way more and doing it way more than Israel. So don't ever forget that.
You know why that is? Because there are 15 million Jews on the planet, and there are 1 billion Muslims on the planet.
Shit.
That would be.
I mean, never mind. I changed my mind on all this.
Wait, I mean, he's not wrong. That he's literally
I
right.
guess
That
he
is
is
definitely
right
a part of
about
it,
that.
and
That's
yet
part of
there
it.
is no democracy. It's also not 1 billion. It's 2. So
Be the reason. I love the conspiratorial. The Jews with their money and those money Jews, but we are still winning.
wait, it's a conspiracy to say that Israel spends a ton of money specifically to propagandize? What are you saying? saying? Classic. Are you saying Jews love money? It's like, no, man. Nobody said that. Also, 50 million
I mean,
Jews,
they
but,
do.
like, not all of them are pro-Israel, especially not as pro-Israel as you are.
Well, have you considered that there are a lot of Muslims?
That part is not. That part is not wrong. He is right about
Yeah, I
that.
know.
Like that is part of the reason why the hashtag is so prominent, and it's not just like the Muslim world as well. I would say that there are absolutely more people all around the world that look to the situation in Israel with their ethnic cleansing campaign and say that's fucked up, than vice versa, regardless of the overwhelming media narrative, regardless of what our politicians are saying. So on that front, he's technically not wrong. I know he's just saying it about, you know, there's more Muslims or whatever, but it's just ridiculous.
Because the people love us, or maybe there are a billion Muslims and a huge number of them hate Israel and are anti-Semitic.
Be very careful what you say about Israel.
Fair.
Any believer going against Israel, you are making yourself an enemy against God.
I don't know how this Zionist propaganda made it to the black community, but it is incorrect. First of all, Palestinians and Israelis worship the same God. It's the God from the Abrahamic religions.
Wait, why did he go, it's true. What the why did he, wait, am I crazy? Why did he go, no?
First of all, Palestinians and Israelis worship the same God. It's the God
Look.
from the Abrahamic religions.
Like, he's like shocked. He got whiplash from that. He got scared.
The Bible does not say anything about Israel because Israel was created in 1948 when the British and the United Nations decided to fight a war with Palestine.
What the f is she talking about? What in the world is she?
I mean, the Bible does talk about Israel, so I don't know what she's talking about there.
What are you talking about? Fighting a war with Palestine? In what sense? What, like, this is such pseudo-history. These people are morons. They're morons. The British mandate was in place until 1947.
It wasn't a war. It was just a massacre at that point.
Yeah. At that point, the British weren't actively helping. Before that, they were. They were fucking arming and training these Zionist brigades, which is like very Western involvement in the Middle East core to just like train these fucking rebel groups at the time. And then they go and do a suicide bombing on your fucking headquarters, which is like a tale as old as time itself, you know, like 9/11. Blowback coming from the Jewish terror cells at the time, the Zionist terror cells like Irgun and Lehi, is a timeless certified classic. Yeah.
Certified classic.
It is. They literally, the British were like, oh yeah, it's cool. We'll take the Zionist brigades and we'll fucking train them and we'll give them weapons and then they'll like deal with it on their own. They'll be able to deal with it on their own. And then, oh fuck, the Arabs are revolting too much. Maybe we should stop Jewish immigration into the area because it's becoming too much of a problem. Oh fuck, oh my god, the Zionist brigades that we trained blew up our fucking headquarters and killed 91 people.
Balfour Declaration declared a Jewish state on both sides of the Jordan. That would be Israel and what is today Jordan. And then, over subsequent years, the British then
Wait. Oh, he's doing the thing where he's like, listen up, Transjordan. That's the one kind of trans I'll always defend.
British mandate was in place until 1947. The Balfour Declaration declared a Jewish state on both sides of the Jordan. That would be Israel and what is
yeah, look, he's trying to, all of a sudden, he's recognizing Transjordan. What's up? What's happening?
today Jordan. And then, over subsequent years, the British then whittled that down. They cut off all of Jordan and handed it to the Arabs. They then cut off most of the land of Israel and handed it to the Arabs. Israel and the Jews accepted every one of those deals, every one of them, including a rump state that was indefensible. What was called by many Jews the Auschwitz borders after World War II, because it's so indefensible. The Jews accepted every one of those deals. The Arabs rejected every one of those deals. What the hell is she, and then she's suggesting that the United States and the Brits fought a war against the...
I like the idea that, you know, Jordan is supposed to be ours as well. Like, he is off the rocker, dude. It's ridiculous. Like, the main point of contention in this situation is that ethnic cleansing occurred, and ethnic displacement occurred as a consequence of the Zionist project. You can't just be like, oh, it was ours. More of it was ours, actually. And it's really fucked up. We're not even asking for more of it now. It's really, really messed up. It's like, what are you, a fucking baby? What's wrong with you? These are like real human beings that live there. Like, he's literally crying. He's like, actually, it was our land. It was given to us by the British. The fuck?
The British, during the 1930s, restricted Jewish immigration into British Mandate Palestine at the behest of the Arabs, leaving millions of Jews to die in Europe. It was so bad that the Jews...
Yeah, really interesting there. Why didn't they fucking let them into England? What are you saying? They were not allowed into America. They were not allowed into fucking the UK. Like, oh man, I can't believe they... It's just... Yeah, it's the fucking Arabs' fault that Jewish people died in the...
I do wonder why they sent them over there. Like, why didn't they say, okay, Germany, since you did this... They get this land now, you know?
Holocaust? What's wrong with you? This is what really pisses me off about the propaganda that is so filthy and so fucking deeply anti-Arab. Like, he has to fucking tie everything back to Arabs. This kind of, like, ahistoric projection is unironically the same kind of Holocaust revisionism Benjamin Netanyahu engaged in.
When the British Mandate ended, the British summarily turned over many of the key strategic locations and weapons to the Arabs. Again, these people...
What?
Famously, the British armed all the Arabs there.
What the fuck?
Wait, just like after the Balfour Declaration, the British occupying force didn't allow any Palestinian newspapers to print any information about it for 2 years because they knew that if the people there found out about it, they would fucking flip out.
That's insane. I feel like a lot of the history that he's explaining is like the exact opposite almost, where the idea that like Zionist forces were not armed to the fucking gills and had basically a standing military. Like, the Haganah was a standing military, which I believe at the time was like, what, 100,000 strong or something? Like, it was a crazy amount of people that were trained by the British Mandate security forces.
Again, these people don't know history. They don't even pretend to know history. They Google something on Wikipedia and then promptly fail to even interpret it properly.
and cut that country in half to create an ethno-state for Ashkenazi Jewish people. And ever since that war, Israel has taken more and more and more of Palestine's territory.
Bro, they literally, okay, I can't get over this. They literally, one, disarmed the Palestinians. Two, armed and trained the Zionist brigades. They also did psyops, like some of the earliest versions of psyops. I guess they were doing psyops at that point, where they would go in and like play fucking loudspeakers on top of military trucks, which the Arabs did not have, by the way, but the Zionist brigades did. Interesting. I wonder how they got access to fucking airplanes and also trucks, armored trucks and whatnot. I guess it was because, you know, they stole it from the Palestinians. I don't know. But they would have big speakers where they would blast, and tanks as well, of course. They would have big speakers where they would blast the sounds of like machine gun fire and bombs to freak out the remaining Palestinians to ensure that they fucking completely left. Of course, they would kill people too on top of that. They were doing like full-scale war with psychological operations of that magnitude.
Israel accepted the partition plan by the UN in 1947-48. The Arabs rejected it and launched a war. Israel won the war and got a little bit more territory. In 1960,
exactly what happened. That was it. No,
I'm sorry. That's literally akin to genocide denial, straight up. I think that's fucking gross.
Yeah, but Israel said that they agreed to the partition, so.
Yeah, they agreed with it so much that they just forcibly expelled 700,000 people from areas that they used to live in.
1967, the Arab nations launched an all-out war to destroy Israel, and in 6 days, Israel took.
They launched an all-out war to destroy Israel. Luckily, Israel got the jump on them. You know what I'm saying? Luckily, they were they were going to do that. I promise. I swear they were going to do that. Except no, they weren't. And like literally, American authorities, Israeli authorities, openly admitted that was not happening.
The entirety of what is now modern day.
It's so strange, isn't it? Crazy how Israel is always the underdog in these stories and perfectly morally infallible.
Hell yeah.
Like it's just they've never done anything wrong. It's always so fucked up.
All of
it's
their
always
enemies are ontologically evil.
Yeah,
and nothing they do is wrong.
It's crazy because like all of their enemies are just about to attack them, and then they just immediately attack first in self-defense, of course, preemptive self-defense.
Israel, including Judea, Samaria, and the Gaza Strip. In 1973, another all-out war by the Arabs. In 1979, Israel gave back the entire Sinai Desert to Egypt.
Also, one of the grossest parts about this is that they always, like Ben and everyone else does this as well when they want to defend the Zionist project, they always will say Arabs is a shady way to conflate Arabs with Palestinians. Because in a lot of these circumstances, it's not necessarily like the Palestinians themselves doing any of this. It's just the Palestinians getting fucking butchered, slaughtered, sometimes by even the Jordanian occupation, as a matter of fact. So the idea that it's like Arabs, they're doing it, the Arabs are doing it, the Arabs are doing it together is a way to try and continue the sin of all of the Arab nations and Arab nationalist movements even that engaged in purging Jewish people from their countries in the aftermath of Israel's formation and leading up to Israel's formation in their own post-colonial endeavors. They want to always make it seem like Palestinians are responsible because like all Arabs are monolithic. They're all responsible for just hating on Israel too much. And Palestinians are the greatest expression of like that responsibility. That's why they deserve to be ethnically cleansed from Israel.
There's also just something about it coming out of his mouth that just feels so intensely racist.
Oh yeah, I mean he is.
I mean, like I know he is.
I don't think
but I just,
that it's
I can't
him
even
being racist. I think that he's
well,
like
it just
emotionally
feels like they're using
invested
this to
into
create a
it, and then
monolith,
he
otherizing this group of people.
Yeah.
In a disgusting way. Be like, well,
and he just gets real pissed about it.
Like that's
yeah.
What should I call him?
Yeah, they all the Arabs were working in unison and collaborating and have one like a one-track mind, famously, which is to kill all the Jews. That's what was going on.
Egypt. In 1995, under the Oslo Accords, Israel surrendered the Gaza Strip as well as large swaths of Judea and Samaria to terrorist groups in order to attempt.
Oh my God. It's just Israel was like, hey man, please, I want Gaza to prosper. Oh wait, just kidding. We're gonna keep fucking putting settlements there. There was no surrender of the Gaza Strip, which is so disgusting to say to begin with. It's like, oh wow, we surrendered the Gaza Strip. Like, here, have this fucking piece of land for 2 million people. Anytime someone who is defending the Zionist project says that Israel always was on board with Palestinian statehood or giving Palestinians autonomy, it is a fucking lie. No, Ben is not brainwashed and Ben is not ignorant. Ben is a malicious liar who is bloodthirsty and wants the full scale cleansing of Palestinians.
That he's that.
Pull up the sewer tweet, you know that one?
Yeah, the Arabs like to bomb shit. Israelis like to build. Arabs like to live in sewage and blow up stuff. Yeah. Classic. He's a racist monster. As far as being like, oh, we gave Gaza back to terrorists.
I think that he actually has went and said that tweet was not very good.
Fucking disgusting.
These people don't know anything about history. They don't even pretend to know anything about history. It's absurd. We'll get to more on this.
That's facts, though. I don't know anything about history.
Yeah, Ben, on the other hand, also doesn't know any like accurate information from history. He knows only enough to like omit key details to make it seem, and not even doing a good job, in my opinion, to make it seem like Israel's perfectly infallible and perfectly just in its actions.
We will never feel ashamed of our support of the Palestinian people.
Hamas.
Black student organizers at Harvard are being attacked by right-wing forces for their support of Palestine. Okay. Their faces are being shown on trucks around campus, accusing them of being anti-Semites.
Well, okay, actually, can we fill that in right there? The reason that those trucks are on campus is because a bunch of student groups signed a statement blaming Israel for the massacre of...
I can't believe it. You know who else did that? Haaretz. Woke scold anti-Semites. The Israeli paper of record editorial team. I'm here to tell you. Woke scold anti-Semites. I would dox all of them, too. You know who else I want to dox? The Shin Bet, okay?
I recorded and edited my 45-minute podcast in under 10 minutes using Riverside, and here's how. After I finish recording with Riverside, I start by using their text-based editor. I have filler words and sections that I need to remove, so all I have to do is drag across what I don't want and hit delete. So I finished editing the episode, but I want to create podcast clips too. And Riverside...
The internal Israeli security apparatus. Woke scolds. Which is identical to what the Netanyahu administration said at the time. But, you know, all these guys, they're woke. They're woke scolds. I hate those guys.
Actually, Hamas started this whole thing.
Remember October 7th? Actually, that's wrong. Before October 7th, Israeli security forces killed 248 Palestinians, and 40 of them were children, and that was just this year. And if you want to go back further than that, we can look at the recent history of war crimes committed by the Israeli government. Operation Protective Edge in 2014, Operation Pillar of Defense in 2012, Operation Cast Lead in
I mean, it's cool that he's letting this guy fucking spit. I mean, it's true.
2009.
What started each one of those operations?
They started it! Dude, it's awesome. Ben Shapiro's always been baby-like, obviously, which is, like, he is very baby girl, for sure. But, like, something about Israel turns his commentary into, like, the most petulant, spoiled child, like the fat kid in the Wonka's factory or whatever the fuck. You know what I mean? He's just like, I don't know.
Is his name Otto, Chat?
I don't know. I've never even watched it. I've just only seen, like, gifs of it. But
oh, it's Augustus
Gloop. I don't know. He just... He is like,
I'm changing my name for you in my phone to Augustus Gloop.
Okay. He just sounds literally like Boss Baby, like a baby throwing a fucking tantrum.
Islamic barrages of rockets into civilian centers in Israel.
Dude, I'm not even dude, we have to give the Gaza Strip an Iron Dome. First of all, arm both sides of a conflict, we make more money. That's number one.
Businessman.
I'm a fucking businessman, dog. I love the military-industrial complex. We need to start arming the Palestinian population so they can have an even playing field. Like, what do you mean? More war, more conflict continues, right?
War is good for the
economy. More money. War is good for the economy.
That's what started each one of these operations. I love this moron.
I mean,
I guess
is
the idea
kind
here
of
is that,
what we're doing
as he points out,
already.
that what has caused the current conflict is the massacre of 1,500 Jews. Like, well, you know, before that, Israel killed other Palestinians. You're like, yeah, but why would they do that? And the answer is because they were associated with terrorist groups.
Palestinian babies, Israel's greatest nightmare. Nobody does it like the Palestinian babies do.
The thing is, babies grow up and they become terrorists.
Yeah, they're
so maybe
they're terrorists in the making.
Do the math.
Yeah.
Do the math.
He's so good. He's so good at the arguments.
And he's like, yeah, but what about the conflict? Oh, you mean because the terrorists were firing rockets into Israel? It's an infinite regress.
Yeah, that's always how it works. It was always like first Intifada, terrorists throwing rockets into Israel. You know, it was always the same. It was always the Nakba, terrorists throwing rockets, Hamas throwing rockets into Israel. Guys, never forget, Israel is always in the right. It's just crazy. I don't know how it happened. I don't know how it happened. They're always in the right. It's just so crazy. How, like the luck. Like think about the luck that like for 75 years, every single preemptive first strike that you've engaged in, you're always doing it in self-defense.
Just name a bunch of operations that actually explaining why the operations were initiated.
Yeah, but you don't mention why.
Yeah, why were they initiated? I wonder. I don't know. Maybe fucking killing and brutalizing Palestinians at the mosque in Jerusalem. Every fucking year, there is literally a march through Palestinian territories where Palestinians live in both Sheikh Jarrah, but also throughout the West Bank, where the most far-right ultra fucking Zionists will march through the streets and purposely try to incite the Palestinians and instill fear upon their hearts by celebrating Israel's territorial acquisition. And they say incredibly horrifying things in that process. On top of that, they do the annual Al-Aqsa Ramadan raids. They also stop the Palestinians in Gaza from even going into Al-Aqsa deliberately. They restrict their freedom of movement. They beat the shit out of the people. They beat them in the fucking mosque. It's completely unacceptable.
Cast lead happened. Hamas fired rockets into Israel. And that was because Israel broke the ceasefire agreement they had on November 4th, 2008, while the entire world was in euphoria over the United States electing its first black president, Barack Obama. Israel used the opportunity to break the ceasefire agreement and raid Gaza and kill Palestinians.
For no reason, they're just raiding Gaza, just for fun. They just raid.
Dude, he predicted Ben's argument. This guy's awesome. I'm gonna give him a follow. Thank you, Ben. He did a pretty good job. Like, okay, sick. I normally don't like TikTokers in general. Hate those guys. Fucking silly and you know, especially ones that like talk about politics every now and then. Lame.
Did you just fart?
Are you lying so that you can? You know you have no noise gate, right? If I farted, you could hear it.
I think you just pulled a silent but deadly on me.
Oh, that's funny. That you pulled the fucking ripcord.
Raid Gaza.
Is that how much I upset you? That you had to lie about it?
This is a chemical attack that's happening right now.
It's ridiculous.
To do what exactly? To steal their nothing? What would the raid entail?
Ooh, he had a really good one. That was good.
To steal their nothing.
Well, I mean, according to the Israeli officials, they call it mowing the lawn. So that's why they do it. To fucking kill them.
Israel so desperately wanted not to be in Gaza, they surrendered the place to a fucking terrorist group for 20 years, who then...
Yeah, no, totally. And they just like kind of let them thrive after that. It was pretty cool.
Famously.
Famously. First of all, they literally pulled out of Gaza specifically so they could bomb it. Do a little bit of ethnic cleansing there. You know what I mean? Also, the secondary purpose is that you could just fucking sit there and act like that is the only Palestinian authority that you care about, that you care to deal with, that you increasingly radicalize, knowing full well that they will retaliate.
You know one thing that I've noticed? They keep saying they're running out of power, they're running out of fuel, they're running out of water. You know the thing they haven't been running out of? Rockets.
Well, you're leaving out a lot of context. You got to go back further than that, to 1967. Yeah, let's go back to 1967, when Israel started a preemptive war.
But wait, that means
every time he makes an argument, this guy's like, "You're a fucking idiot, Ben," and then Ben's like, "God, no."
I like that he is having an argument with himself, but he's doing a good job of representing Ben's position.
Mobilizing its Air Force.
Syria and Jordan, and took more land from Palestine, further enclosing Palestinians into the Gaza Strip. They illegally occupied the Gaza Strip and the West Bank in what has been formally condemned ever.
Imagine losing a debate to a TikTok that you're watching.
Wait, yeah, didn't he watch this? Didn't he watch the TikTok already? He just skipped it. It's fucking sick.
He got so angry
that he's like getting mad, but also he just gave this guy 348,000 views, and like not every single person is a Ben Shapiro fan that's watching this. And honestly, this is great for him. How do you lose to a TikTok?
Since 1967, as an illegal occupation in violation of international law, unilaterally condemned by the World Court.
About the World Court.
Bitch, what do you mean? Dude, this is my favorite way that like Ben gets angry, where he's like, the UN is anti-Semitic and no one should listen to them. Or like, the IDF account or the Israel account does this as well on Twitter when they're like, own the Geneva Conventions by being like, ceasefire is anti-Semitic. And it's like, dude, what the fuck? Sometimes you have to blow up babies. Like, what are you doing? You're not winning anybody over with this. If this is the best you got, you're fucking cooked.
Or you mean organizations staffed by people who hate Israel and the UN?
Yes. God, I love this.
Of the countries on the planet.
Yeah. No,
for censoring them constantly.
Staffed by, majority of the planet is anti-Semitic. Everyone's anti-Semitic. When America says like we need to allow humanitarian aid to come into Israel, that's anti-Semitic. It's anti-Semitic. Everybody hates Israel, and Israel, of course, represents all Jews. And I've created this perfect little logical box in my mind. And if you don't agree with me, then you're also Hamas.
Like, the UN, the Red Cross,
oh my God,
the Geneva Conventions,
the Geneva
Worldwide
Conventions.
Consensus.
He's doing this.
He did it! I don't know. I didn't know he was going to go there, but he did it. He's like, Geneva Conventions.
Geneva suggestions.
Yeah, you've literally lost the plot. You've lost the majority of the people. At least, like, liberals act like these things mean anything. Like, I know it doesn't, right? But, like, you can't turn around and be like, Geneva Conventions. Who cares about the Geneva Conventions? We have to kill Palestinian babies. You're not even debunking him. You're just angrily yelling at
I don't
global
give a shit
institutions
about
and the
the
rules
Geneva
that, for the most part, benefited Israel and now are like lightly critical of Israel's gross violations of all of those rules of war. But it's too much. I can't believe it.
It's in defense of Hamas.
Countries in the world all call on Israel to return to its pre-June 1967 borders.
That's not even true. Even the UN resolutions, which are garbage and stupid, even those UN resolutions calling Israel to surrender some of the occupied territory.
Dude, this is so good. He's so good. Why did he get owned by a video he chose personally to watch?
Just kept going.
That was awesome. Yeah, he hates the UN and Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch and B'Tselem and the Geneva Conventions. And he also openly said occupied territories, which is cool. Why did he?
I mean, the Geneva Convention is woke. Like, we can agree that it's kind of woke.
Yeah, it's fucked up. Like, what do you mean war crimes? You know what I mean? I think you should be able to do whatever you want during war. There's no reason for it.
Not all occupied territory. Those are disputed territories. Some occupied territories.
Yeah, but you're missing more.
Wait,
it's still going, bro. He's beating him up.
Okay,
this guy doesn't even know he's in a debate with Ben Shapiro.
Yeah,
right now.
and he's fucking crushing, dude. Every moment in the last like 3 minutes of this 14-minute video has just been him getting fucking owned and yelling about the Geneva Conventions and admitting that Israel is occupying territory and like should give back some of it, or at least according to the UN. Like it's great.
Context, you got to go back to 1948. Okay, let's
go
back to
1948.
In 1948.
No. Don't talk about that. Why is he? He's losing. He's losing the argument. He's still losing the argument. No, it's fine. It's fine.
No, don't talk about that.
67 is fine. Oh, what the fuck?
Zionists extirpated about 1 million Palestinians from their homes and forced them to relocate to the Gaza Strip.
What? Excuse me. In 1947-48, there was a full-scale war between Arabs and Israelis. Somewhere between 700...
That's crazy, dude. Yeah, full-scale war. Like when they went into the Deir Yassin village, which already had a truce pact with all of the nearby villages, right? The Jewish villages, and therefore did not even have like a standing militia or anything. And, they threw children in ovens and people in wells and stuff like that and like horrifyingly raped them and stuff. That was a war, actually. That was just war. Simply war. Many documented instances of war crimes from that entire period of time, which Israel refuses to declassify, even though we have passed the 50-year mark, by the way, which is so American. God, Israel is so America. It's crazy. The Nakba was not a fucking war. It's like, I'm sorry to go there, but it would be as ridiculous as saying like the Holocaust was a fucking war, like a two-sided war. It's not. It's ridiculous. You're fighting against people who were ultimately a civilian population. Some of those people had guns, but for the most part, you literally had a standing military at that point that was armed to the fucking teeth and was butchering the shit out of Arabs. Yeah, it's like saying the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising was a war, kind of. Why Israel is blocking access to its archives? Yeah, Israel's concealing vital records to prevent darkest periods in its history from coming to light, academics say. Yeah, the only reason why we have information on the Nakba is because not everyone died. And also the members of Haganah and the Irgun brigades and the Lehi, I don't know fucking, the different terror cells, some of which that actually called themselves terrorists, by the way, self-declared terror cells. Lahi, Stern Gang, which is the pejorative, like the negative way of referring to Lehi, Stern Gang. Some of them tried to fucking collaborate with the Nazis.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, no, they're really, really bad guys. Not good at all, okay?
Either fled or were expelled from areas where there was military activity. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians left in the lead up to the war and during the war because all social services had collapsed.
I hate him so much. Like, I want to laugh, but yeah, Trail of Tears. the Native Americans simply fled. Armenian genocide. Armenians simply fled from areas. They were not forced or anything. They just simply left on their own volition, never to return. Like, what the fuck are you saying? What are you saying? You're doing genocide denial. For the record, I brought up the Armenian example. I don't want anybody to fucking turn around and be like, oh, see, we got him. He's denying the Armenian genocide. I'm not. I'm saying that this is akin to denying the Armenian genocide.
Because the Arab nations were telling them to get out. The other part is that you may have noticed many Arabs remain, which is why 20% of Israel's population currently is Israeli.
Oh my God, he hates Arabs so much. Some of them didn't fucking get the memo, and they remain.
Today, about 70% of all Gazans are considered refugees from the 1948 expulsion.
Hey, pause that for a second. How is that even possible? Seriously, how's that even possible? Well, folks, unfortunately...
Oh, that's it. He got owned and then decided, fuck it, we're done with that.
Almost Direct from the Broski Nation headquarters in Los Angeles, California, this is the Broski Report with your host, Brittany Broski.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Broski Report. I'm Brittany Broski. Okay, I'm like, cut the bullshit today. I'm so fat.
Brendan, you're not fat. It's the shirt.
I do want to watch that, but...
His true classic is tight around the chest and shoulders and arms, and then it tapers off towards the bottom.
Nate also has six-pack abs.
The point is, the shirt doesn't highlight your best attributes.
What are my best attributes?
You're a really good dad.
Yeah, I am.
Why do guys not know how to dress themselves?
What do you mean?
Girls will find you more attractive if you dress better.
You really think that's all we care about?
Yes.
What do we do?
Oh, I've done it. I've created the ultimate online video. I watched every YouTube video, but because I thought that Mr. Beast would do that very thing, I decided to do him one better. I watched every YouTube video and counted every pixel on every frame of every video. And guess what? I still thought that Jimmy might do that, so I decided to do him one better. I did it all in 24 hours, and I'll give away $100,000 to every viewer of that video. I've done it. I've done it. It's unbreakable. It's unbeatable. No one can ever outdo me. I've outbeasted the beast. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the superlative channel for overthinking all your favorite things on the internet. Today on MatPat Talks About Topics I'm Thinking About instead of a game theory, we're gonna be talking about phases. We all go through phases, right? We wear different stuff, we watch different things, and on YouTube we make different content. For the last 3 years, YouTube has been going through what I'm calling the era of excess. And I probably don't have to explain to you exactly what I mean by that. You pretty much know it when you see it. The title has the word every in it every time. I tried every food from every state. I tried every impossible sport. Mythical has a format called We Tried Every, where they try every flavor of a thing. The Try Guys have Keith Eats the Menu, where he tries every item on a restaurant menu. Eric tries every drive-thru. Eddie Burback goes to every Margaritaville. Matthew Beam goes to every Disneyland where Alpha Rad rides every ride. Drew Binsky visited all 197 countries, while Markiplier just tries every flavor of Taki. I mean, he actually just licked every flavor of Takis. It's a bit disturbing there, Mark. Even more disturbing than your trailer for Iron Lung. Anyway, you see where I'm going with this. It's every trend that you see everywhere on the platform. Not to be overlooked, though, this phase also includes what I call the nice round number syndrome, which contains a big old number with a dollar sign in front, and the numbers just keep getting bigger. While Mr. Beast has certainly been the one mainstreaming this recently, nice round numbers, they've been making titles and thumbnails more clickable since 2012, when top 10s and top 5 lists dominated the entire YouTube ecosystem. And once you know it, but clickable numbers become even more clickable once they're associated with money, leading to all your favorite giveaway and comparison videos. The numbers evolved from top 10s to top 100s to $100, and then we started adding zeros from there. Many, many zeros. Now we have $1 steak versus $1,000 steak, $1 versus $100,000 computers, $1 houses versus $100 million houses. And of course, the all-time classic, I gave a random person on the street $100,000 for the clout. I mean, obviously there's some vague reason, but we all know what the underpinning of it is, right? It's the clout. We've seen $10,000 ice cream, the world's biggest pizza, and we've watched Casey Neistat recline his way through every expensive Emirati flight on the planet. It's great. Clearly we all love it and watch it, otherwise the algorithm wouldn't serve it up to you on a silver platter, but I'm here to tell you that there's a hidden cost to these videos, and no amount of dollar signs and zeros is ever gonna do it justice. The interesting thing about excess videos is that they're not just about the superlative of something or trying something nicer than average, they're a constant, unwinnable game of escalation. We already ate the biggest burger at one restaurant, so, you know, then we had to escalate. We had to eat the biggest burger at every restaurant, but once you do that, where else do you go? Well, then you have to eat at every restaurant that ever serves a burger. You get the idea. I'm sure if I asked you why we like this sort of content so much, there are some easy answers that come to mind. It's satisfying. You get to see things that are too expensive to buy for yourself. Maybe it's funny to see people try crazy stuff. All of that is very true, but there's also a lot more boiling under the surface of our excess addiction on YouTube. Understanding the psychology of why you're watching these videos might make you think twice about when to click on them and when to keep scrolling. Today we're talking about where this era of excess comes from, where it's going, and why you should know for your own mental health. It's probably no surprise to you that watching content on the internet, any content, even this sort of content, is doing all sorts of things to your brain. In a nutshell, consuming content online when you're scrolling on YouTube Shorts, TikTok, or Instagram activates neuronal pathways in your brain that are commonly known as reward pathways. You scroll and ooh, a new thing to see. Scroll again and ooh, another new thing to see. Forever and ever, endlessly to the end of time. And each time your brain gets a little happy response to seeing something novel, something funny, something beautiful or interesting. All the things that we try to make our content look like online. These happy feelings come from your brain's dopamine reward pathway, and they're the same ones that get activated when someone hands you an ice cream sundae, or the feeling that you get when you beat a level in a video game. Years ago, we actually did a video on this channel all about the addictive qualities of games like Candy Crush, which is just as relevant today for social media as it was back then for mobile gaming addiction. In case you haven't seen it, I'm gonna summarize it quickly. When it comes to consuming content, unfortunately, we're going in with the deck stacked against us, starting with the literal brain inside our own heads. Biologically, our brains have been wired from the beginning to find rewarding experiences in life, and then double down on those rewards because a few thousand ancestors ago, that was what was able to keep us alive. Now, that reward-seeking behavior we all have baked into our neurons gets translated to a key weakness that can be exploited by everyone from game developers to marketing companies, and especially by social video platforms. Watching funny TikToks, satisfying aesthetic videos on Instagram, and clever YouTube Shorts, they're all microdosing dopamine into your brain all day long until you're suddenly feeling compelled to keep scrolling just to try and feel okay. There's been a lot of research done in this area, and even if literally none of us are following the advice of limit your screen time, we at least know, yeah, we probably should be doing that. But no, really, yeah, we probably should be doing that. The TLDR of all this is that the For You page is giving your brain exactly what it wants, which isn't always a good thing. The thing is, friendos, well, it's easy for all of us to collectively point to short-form video as the thing that's getting us hooked on all these platforms, the things that are shamelessly riding those dopamine waves. They're not the only ones that are giving us that little boost to happy. The era of access on YouTube has given us the exact same action on these same reward pathways, even with long-form videos. It's doing this in two main ways. First, the structure of the video usually sets you up for lots of little micro doses of dopamine rewards all the way throughout the video, starting with the opening seconds. Let's just take a classic example from...
Dear Freedom, here's to more miles driven, more dollars saved.
From Good Mythical Morning, I tried every flavor of Lay's chips, where they have the setup of these videos down to a science. Probably why it's a whole series over on GMM. They start right off the bat by teasing what's in the video. This hooks you in the first few seconds in the exact same way that a TikTok does.
27 flavors of Lay's, but only one can be the best. Let's talk about that.
This is the exact same tactic that Mr. Beast uses in every one of his $1 versus $1 million videos. Or I guess now it's $100 million videos.
This is a $100 million mega mansion.
And this isn't me trying to single out any creators or point fingers. It's just a tactic used by everyone who's successful on the platform right now. Josh Weissman. Today we're going to be ranking and tasting every major fast food burger in America. Air-Rack.
You're looking at a collection of all the fastest man-made vehicles in history.
Hopescope.
I bought every Barbie dream house.
I don't know
Mr. Who's the
Hopescope
Boss.
is.
I've just bought every single Xbox
Or,
console.
I don't know
Basically,
who that
every
is
major
either.
creator on the platform is zeroed in on this strategy as a psychological tactic to get your attention on YouTube. But that's not enough. After those catchy opening seconds, you break the video up into manageable chunks that are, oh, I don't know, somewhere around 60 to 90 seconds each, about the exact same as a TikTok, so people feel like they're getting a new reward for every minute that they stay tuned into the video. Take a look at that same GMM video to see what I mean. 45 seconds to 1 minute and 15 seconds goes by, they switch to a new flavor of chip, giving you just long enough for a satisfying crunch, some color commentary, a couple of jokes, bam, on to the next before you got bored. In Hopescope's tour through the history of Barbie dream houses, a video that I personally loved, by the way, she switches between dream houses less than every 2 minutes. Air-Rack is way more intense when ranking all the fast food restaurants, going through them at a pace of 10 to 30 seconds each. Mr. Beast's favorite way to do this is by completely switching up challenges every 3 minutes or so. His classic I gave away an island to my 100 millionth subscriber video switches challenges every 1 minute and 30 seconds to 2 minutes and 45 seconds. While in his somewhat controversial curing people's blindness video, the longest any individual patient gets in front of the camera is 50 seconds. I could go on and on and on with hundreds of examples of these videos across the platform, each with tens, sometimes hundreds of millions of views, but it all boils down to this one thing. YouTube videos, my friends, have become high-polished compilations, kind of like TikTok compilations or Vine compilations before them, whether or not you or even the people making them realize it. And it works real well. But wait a minute, I hear you saying, telling me I'm throwing all my fellow creators under the bus. How could I do that to all my friends? I'm just a YouTube turncoat. And hey, wait a minute, didn't this video start out using these exact same tactics? Well, let me be clear. Creators, including little old theorists over here, work to make the best content possible for viewers and fans based on the rules of the platform they're working on. You would never see a TikTok start with long, slow classical music and a black screen, right? Why? Well, because the platform doesn't serve that sort of content. People don't respond to slow TikToks with no visuals. That would be insane. By the same token, YouTube creators have to live within the extremely rigid boundaries of the platform and the content that's getting recommended here. Yeah, big creators have videos that work very well. And also, it's not really their fault. Creators aren't implementing TikTok tactics like this because they're trying to trick you. They're doing it because this content is what YouTube systems have told them is working. And in case it's still a secret, friends, YouTube has one goal and one goal only here in
To make
2023,
money.
to look and feel a lot like TikTok. It's no coincidence that the excess phase of YouTube is happening at the same time as the rise of TikTok and the same time as YouTube launching its own TikTok killer as Shorts. A lot of large creators understand that they're not competing with each other, they're competing with the product that YouTube really needs to win, Shorts. So at this point, this is the real picture of what making content on YouTube looks like. Creators have to make videos that are as exciting as a TikTok, but long enough to feed YouTube's recommendation system lots and lots of tasty watch minutes. And in case you're not aware of what's going on behind the curtain, these episodes take weeks or even months to create, often costing tens, if not even hundreds of thousands of dollars to produce, all while still needing to be brand safe. Young skewing, but not too young skewing. New and original while still feeling familiar enough for you to click on, and they might just make it onto someone's homepage. Then again, YouTube might just give that space to Shorts instead.
Never fall down, never fail, never show fear, never get out of line. It's too hard. It's too contradictory.
So what's left after all that? Well, a lot of escalation. How do you get people's attention on YouTube now? Do something bigger, more expensive, more flashy, or dangerous for as long as you possibly can in as many short, discrete chunks as you can. At the end of the day, this isn't about the creators that you're watching, it's about the platform that you're watching those creators on. But there's more to this fun little escalation circus. With more complicated and over-the-top production comes the need for more help. A lot more help. While videos on the platform are becoming more pigeonholed into this escalation and excess genre, they also need a lot more manpower to pull them off. Rhett and Link employ nearly 100 full-time employees. Smosh is over 30. Mr. Beast is at least 100, and individual creators who look like they film alone now have full-time teams of at least 10 to 15 people hunting the corners of the earth to find every impossible sport, Pop-Tarts flavor, and MacBook. The cost of these enormous teams lay on even more pressure for every episode to be an every episode, because it has to be a banger. Instead of stories, characters, or in-depth narratives that feel risky, access videos can be executed by any team who can build a bigger set, visit more Olive Gardens, or buy more weird shoes for you to try on without running into a lot of creative risks. Right now, this is one of the only ways to effectively thread the needle. It's hard to blame people for leaning into the content that's successful, but you gotta admit, all of it feels a bit limited. There's not a lot of feeling under the surface there other than, whoa, amazing, with that little Vine boom animation to make it seem like something more exciting happened on screen. Overall, it just makes the platform as a whole feel stagnant when everything carries the same tone. And whose fault is that? The platform. With that in mind though, so far we've only talked about the ways that the era of excess is hijacking our brain and the programming schedule of your favorite creator. But what about you, as a normal viewer? Turns out that the era of excess may be having a number of other unintended consequences for fans of YouTube, and these consequences aren't so easy to detox from. First, let's just talk about what's so appealing about excess content when we watch it. It's fun. It's neat to see people take things to the extreme, and for a lot of us, the era of excess is a form of escapism. Now, there's nothing wrong with a little escapism. People have been using books, TV, movies, theater, video games, all kinds of media forever to escape their humdrum lives, or in our case, a world that often feels like it's about to burn down around us.
I think I might win this, actually.
These moves looking real nice in the future. These moves looking real nice in the future. Pull up on them and it look nice. Look nice.
Dungeon Alchemist is an AI-powered map-making application that allows you to make amazing maps in just a few clicks. You can then easily print these maps and use them in your role-playing games. Or you can import them into your favorite VTT with walls and lights configured for you. Here's how it works. First, choose a terrain for your map. Then, pick a theme. How about an old school crypt? Or maybe an abandoned mansion? Just start drawing room.
A lot of time, escapism media portrays a life that's better, more magical, or often more wealthy than our own. It idealizes tiny problems, fancy clothes, fancy cars, extravagant vacations, or enormous houses. Any of those topics sound familiar? They should. They're literally everywhere in the era of excess here on YouTube. Visit the craziest hotels, eat the $1,000 steak, try on the 20 new outfits that you can never afford.
Yeah,
and
no,
do
I
it
do
in
find
every
this
video
era of
across
YouTube
There's
really
actually a name for this
cringe.
kind of viewership. And if it sounds
I
gross,
wish
well,
that
it
it was
It's called wealth
that
porn.
we
It's
still
been around
had
just as long as wealth
like
itself
the
has.
filthy
If you're a boomer,
prank
your generation had
era
one
of
style of the
YouTube.
rich
That
and
shit
famous,
was
one of the
way
most
better.
influential reality shows of all time before reality TV was even a thing. As the creator of the show described it, it allowed everyone to feel like someday they too could live a fancy lifestyle.
When you first conceived, did you have any idea that people would be as interested in how the other half lived?
It's almost as if the whole thing has slipped into the vernacular of the dictionary because everybody is curious, but to an extent that we never dream. Here in America, everybody wants to be a winner. Everybody dreams of being very, very successful. And so for a moment, with our show, we showcase the winners, and then we let the people dream and say, yes, we too could live like that and be like that.
Moving into the 90s and 2000s, he had shows like MTV Cribs, Real Housewives, and then the ultimate in wealth prawn, Keeping Up with the Kardashians. With each of those shows on their own escalating journey to show off more wealth, more extravagance, and more aspirational living than the last. But where wealth prawn used to be confined to just a couple of shows that aired a few times a week, now it's literally everywhere. Every time you log onto YouTube, there it is, a brand new video, or 3 or 7, all ready for you to consume to get that hit of dopamine, except that's not truly what happens. When you're surrounded by wealth prawn all the time, instead of feeling inspired by the beautiful lifestyles showcased online, viewers report feeling more discouraged about their own lifestyle. Because everywhere you look, it feels like there's someone who has it better than you. Someone who can afford to explore exotic islands, or buy 30 pairs of sneakers, all the while inflation continues to rise out here in the real world. Everything is getting more expensive, and you're just out here wondering if you're going to be able to afford next month's rent. But if every video you see online is in every video, it can be hard to remember that fact, and it starts to normalize the idea that we should all be living in this excessive way. So when we can't, we start to become disappointed and dissatisfied. And because dopamine is now tied to our viewing addiction, it leads us to watch another video to try and get that hit, to try and feel normal again, to try and see what this one is going to be like. And you just wind up repeating the cycle again and again and again, ultimately making us feel worse off mentally. This is especially true for younger viewers, where studies have shown that those who spend more time on social media, including YouTube, reported higher levels of comparison and lower self-esteem as a result. It's especially dangerous when you consider that 25% of young people reported going to platforms like TikTok to get financial advice, which can then lead them to not only feeling worse, but actually spending more on things they don't need to try and achieve that lifestyle that they're constantly being shown they should have. So what then do we do? Well, half the battle is just knowing what we're watching in the first place. When we see a video's cold open shouting at your face that you're about to see every of something, you need to recognize that that video is designed to trick your brain into thinking it's getting a prize. Spoiler alert, it's not. It's actually a TikTok compilation designed to give you a hit of dopamine every 2 minutes or less. And seeing a bigger dollar amount in the title, that's not going to lead you to feel better about yourself or the state of your bank account. Also, it's important to recognize that even though YouTubers seem to be all footloose and fancy-free with their expensive stuff and far-flung vacations, what you're seeing isn't real. Behind those big videos are big expense checks, and all the brand deal and ad revenue that pours in is getting poured right back out to the massive teams that are making these videos happen. Behind the fun is a lot of paperwork, production calendars, and more coordination than your typical Hollywood shoot. No one is truly living the way that you see in these videos, and whatever you see on screen was meticulously curated by a team that's bigger than however big you imagine them to be. Now, we can speculate about where the platform goes from here, the future of shorts, how far you can escalate before you hit a ceiling, what YouTube should be doing as a platform, but that's all episodes for another day. For now, knowledge is power, so consider yourself armed and ready to take on the next video that you watch. Just make sure that you're playing it and it's not playing you. But hey, that's just a theory. A Matt Pat talks about topics that I'm thinking about instead of a game theory. Thanks for watching.
And here are just some of what we will do when we become the 47th president of the United States. Before I even arrive at the Oval Office, shortly after I win the presidency, I will have the horrible war between Russia and Ukraine settled. Look, that's
I actually do believe that. A bunch of people say that it would never happen, but I think
the United States must also build a state-of-the-art missile defense shield. Look, we got to have a missile defense shield. We got all these maniacs in all these countries, not only countries, big countries where you can talk and, you know, they have a lot to lose also, but you have people getting nuclear missiles. I wanted to stop that. We had it stopped with Iran. We have to have a shield. I want to build a shield around our country, and these shields work. Frankly, if Israel didn't have a shield, you wouldn't have Israel today. You wouldn't have, they stop thousands of rockets a week, but we have to build a much more sophisticated shield, and it's going to be made right here in the USA, so it's not all bad, and a lot of it's going to be made in New Hampshire. A lot of it's made in New Hampshire. You're going to have a nice big shield. And for years, American taxpayers have bankrolled space-age missile defense system to protect foreign nations. We do these incredible things, and we give it to foreign nations. We have very little ammunition now. How about Biden?
I recorded and edited my 45-minute podcast in under 10 minutes using Riverside, and here's how. After I finish recording with Riverside, I start by using their text-based editor. I have filler words and sections that I need to remove, so all I have to do is drag across what I don't want.
A couple of months ago, it says, we have a problem. We have very little ammunition. Can you imagine? Let's assume that's true. It is true. But who would say that? You don't say that. Ladies and gentlemen, we have communist China, and we have Russia that hate us. I want to say right now we have very little ammunition. He actually said we have very little. Even if it's true, number one, we shouldn't have been in that position. But we have given so much ammunition to other countries, in particular Ukraine. We don't have any ammunition. These people, well, it's like the guy I told you about. Well, you'll be making a lot of our ammunition. We had so much ammunition, we were blowing it into warehouses. We were taking warehouses all over the country, storing our ammunition. We had so much ammunition, and now we have very little, just like in the strategic reserves. We have very little. Guess. Under my leadership, we will once again protect our own people with our own missile defense system capable of blasting China, Russia, Iranian missiles out of the sky. And we will, in addition, have offensive weapons that will be second to none. We'll have the greatest weaponry. We have the best people. You know, Russia stole the we call them the super dupers, right? They go super fast. They stole that during the Obama administration. They stole the plans. It was all very highly classified. They stole the plans and they built it. Americans deserve an Iron Dome, and that's what we're going to have. We're going to have an Iron Dome around our country. And we'll save a fortune because a lot of countries that we protect, number one, they can't stand us. Number two, they don't deserve protection. The money we waste is incredible. I will end Joe Biden's inflation disaster, and we will quickly rebuild the greatest economy in the history of the world. Very quickly. It's going to go fast. Get ready.
Very quickly.
And unlike the sanctimonious who voted to gut Medicare and Social Security and voted 3 times to raise the retirement age to 70, I will always protect Medicare and Social Security for our great seniors. We're not going to be raising ages like you. We have so many other things we can do, like, as an example, utilize what's under our feet, liquid gold. We're going to make so much money with our liquid gold. We were all set, and we were starting to do it. We were energy independent. Within 6 months, we were going to be energy dominant all over the world. And this guy stopped it. On day one, I will repeal Joe Biden's insane electric vehicle mandate. Everybody has to have an electric car. Under a Trump administration, gasoline-powered engines will be allowed, but child sexual mutilation will be banned. Can you imagine having to say that? Now, can you imagine having to say it? Can you imagine 15 years ago if you had a politician? Can you believe I'm a politician? I got to say I'm a politician, I guess. But can you imagine you had somebody up here running for office and he said, we're going to ban child sexual mutilation. People would say, is this guy crazy? Of course so. Or we're going to give parental rights back in our schools. Who would think they've taken it away? They're arresting parents. They're arresting parents. I will also sign a new executive order to cut federal funding for any school pushing critical race theory, transgender insanity, and any other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content on our children. And I will not give 1 penny to any school that has a vaccine mandate or a mask mandate. And I will keep men out of women's sports. Is that okay? Crazy. You ever see some of the records that are being broken? Records that were good for 18 years, and now they're being obliterated. Yeah, weightlifter. He says, dude.
I'm gonna end the stream right here. But can you imagine weightlifting records being broken by 150 pounds? They put an ounce on each side, 1 ounce. They put another ounce on the other side. They tried. They couldn't do it. A guy comes. All right. Hopefully, I'll actually start my stream way earlier tomorrow, and I can get into the news and everything, rather than what I did today. I just poured concrete and didn't get home till like 8 o'clock. So, all right. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Doses.